Chapter 391. Hearing the cold voice, Lu Yuan and the other two felt their hair stand on end. However, what was even colder than the voice was Nie Tian's eyes. Lu Yuan and the other two felt the bone-chilling coldness in Nie Tian's eyes, making them feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. The most important thing was that Nie Tian's strength was too strange. He didn't give them any chance to fight back at all. With a series of slaps, the 3 9th level all-manifestation realm martial artists were so dizzy that they couldn't even find their bearings. Lu Yuan couldn't see through Nie Tian's strength and could only guess in his heart that the latter's strength was definitely above the true energy realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to not even have a chance to fight back. However, Nie Tian looked to be only 16 or 17 years old. Was it possible for a 16-year-old true energy realm martial artist? Lu Yuan subconsciously thought it was impossible because such talent could be compared to the 3 monstrous geniuses of the Sumeru spirit capital. However, Duanmu Lu clearly called Nie Tian teacher. He couldn't see through the former's strength, but it was at least higher than his. As his teacher, it was normal for the latter to be at the true energy realm. Could it be that this guy cultivates some heaven-defying martial skill that can keep his appearance young? Lu Yuan had a guess in his heart and immediately confirmed it. That's right. This guy must be an old monster. He just looks young. Actually, his guess could be considered wrong, because Nie Tian was indeed an old monster. However, it wasn't because he cultivated some heaven-defying martial skill, but because he was reborn. Lu Yuan couldn't think of this even if he cracked his head. Duanmu Lu saw that Lu Yuan and the other two were completely scared by Nie Tian and went forward to ask, "Teacher, how should we deal with these 3 guys?" "Destroy their yuan meridians," Nie Tianling said coldly, then locked his gaze on Lu Yuan and said coldly, "Castrate this guy." Duanmu Lu broke out in a cold sweat. Nie Tian was too ruthless. How could he know that Nie Tian's current method was already considered light? Otherwise, how could Lu Yuan and the other two still be alive? "Sir, don't." When Lu Yuan and the other two heard Nie Tian's words, their faces turned pale. They knelt down at the same time and begged bitterly. "Now you know fear. Where did your arrogance go? Go to the south and north streets and find out who the father is. I wouldn't want someone like you even if you were my grandson." Nie Tianling rebuked coldly, without a shred of sympathy in his eyes. Sympathizing with these guys was simply torturing his feelings. "Do it." Nie Tian stopped talking and said to Duanmu Lu cold. "Yes." Duanmu Lu nodded solemnly. A beam of sword energy appeared in his palm, and he blasted it towards a young man in luxurious clothes. "No, I don't want my elemental meridians to be crippled." The young man stood up and ran. "Pooh!" Nie Tian's body shook slightly, and a beam of sword energy shot out. The young man's chest was pierced by the sword energy, and he fell to the ground. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. His body twitched a few times, and he lost all signs of life. Spare me, I won't dare to do it again." Lu Yuan and the other young man saw this and kowtowed crazily, begging bitterly. Duanmu Lu was momentarily stunned, and he hesitated. But Nie Tian's expression was resolute, and he didn't leave any room for negotiation. Even if Lu Yuan made a basin on the ground, Nie Tian wouldn't let him off. "What are you waiting for? Do it." Nie Tianling looked at Duanmu Lu coldly, his face cold. Duanmu Lu was a person with extraordinary talent, a tenacious temperament, and a strong sense of justice. Unfortunately, he was too soft-hearted sometimes, and he would hold back even when facing his enemies. In a real battle, this was a big taboo. If his opponent was similar in strength to him, but was cruel and merciless, not only would Duanmu Lu lose, but he would also die. He couldn't be so lucky forever, and he couldn't always meet an upright opponent like Zhang Xiaoi. Therefore, Nie Tian wanted to nurture Duanmu Lu's murderous heart at this moment. Protecting the good is a virtue. Getting rid of the evil is also a virtue. Seeing Nie Tian's resolute face, Duanmu Lu immediately became ruthless. He shouted angrily, and a beam of sword energy whistled out, hitting the young man beside Lu Zhenyin. Ah! The young man screamed in pain and instantly felt his yuan meridians being destroyed. His heart turned cold, and he directly fainted. It's your turn. Duanmu Lu's eyes were even colder, and he locked his gaze on Lu Zhenyin. Benefactor, please don't hurt him. However, at this time, Li Jiao Air, who was being bullied, suddenly pounced over and stood in front of Lu Zhenyuan. Huh? Duanmu Lu was stunned for a moment, and his face was full of astonishment. He didn't know why this woman wanted to protect the enemy who had bullied her. Nie Tian glanced at Li Jiao Air, and of course he knew why she wanted to protect Lu Zhenyuan. Lu Zhenyuan was the crown prince's brother-in-law, and if he was injured by Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu, and the two of them just left, who would Lu Zhenyuan and the crown prince vent their anger on? Of course, it would be Li Jiao Air. If that happened, not only would Li Jiao Air suffer, but her family, relatives, and friends would also suffer. Li Jiao Air could be considered smart, and she must have thought that if she pleaded for Lu Zhenyuan, he would be grateful and let her go. Unfortunately, she was completely wrong. With Lu Zhenyuan's personality, as soon as Nie Tian left, he would vent all his anger on Li Jiao Air. This was the sorrow of the weak, and they could only be trampled on by the strong. Big fish eat small fish, and small fish eat shrimps. The weak were prey to the strong, and the eternal law of the jungle. There was no right or wrong, no right or wrong. The strong were respected. This was the way of survival in this world. Simple, direct, barbaric, violent. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said directly, "Miss, don't be afraid. We won't leave. We still have to wait for the crown prince behind this guy to come and take revenge. Sir, he is the brother-in-law of our great Chu Empire's crown prince. Please don't hurt him, I beg you." Li Jiao Air cried sincerely, and her pretty face was pale. Duanmu Bai was slightly dazed. He didn't think so much. "Umph." Nie Tianling smiled coldly and said, domineeringly, "I don't care about the great Chu Empire's crown prince. Even if he is the emperor of your great Chu Empire, he must pay the price today." In his previous life, the reason why Nie Tian could become the Heaven Realm's #1 war god, in addition to his monstrous battle strength, was because of his good military management. His subordinates, no matter who they were, as long as they violated the military law, even if they were his direct disciples, they must be punished. The law was like a mountain. Rewards and punishments were clear. This was what it meant to rule the world. If the law was only the privilege of the rich and powerful, then what was the difference between them and prostitutes who could be trampled on by anyone? Evil must be eradicated. Therefore, Nie Tian wouldn't leave. He wanted to wait for the crown prince behind Lu Zhenyuan to come out, condoning his brother-in-law to do evil. This crown prince was definitely not a good person. Li Jiao Air saw the chilling coldness in Nie Tian's eyes and subconsciously moved away. "Cripple him." Nie Tian looked at Duanmu Lu and gave a cold order. Duanmu Lu condensed a sword light in his palm, and without hesitation, he struck towards Lu Zhenyuan's dantian. "Stop." At this time, a sharp voice sounded, and immediately after, an air force attacked, blocking Duanmu Lu's sword light. Nie Tian turned around and saw a valiant and heroic female general standing in front of him. Chapter 392. Nie Tian turned around to look at the female general who had suddenly appeared. She exuded a threatening, heroic spirit, and the aura she exuded was even more unyielding than that of an ordinary man. Nie Tian had been with soldiers in his previous life, and he was also a soldier. The woman in front of him was definitely a righteous soldier. The burning and pressing heroic spirit that she exuded was definitely not deceiving. General Gu. Nie Tian seemed to have heard the onlookers mention this name earlier. It seemed like she was teased by Lu Zhenyuan in the crown prince's residence, and then beaten up. If this woman was the General Gu that everyone was talking about, then Lu Zhenyuan's lust was truly fearless. He actually dared to lust for such a heroic soldier. He was definitely courting death. The fact that General Gu did not kill him was already a benevolent bodhisattva. Nie Tian didn't guess wrongly. This heroic armored woman was the General Gu that everyone was talking about. General Gu was called Gu Wuyo, and she was the only female general of the Great Chu Empire. What surprised Tian even more was that this General Gu in front of him actually looked to be in his 20s or even younger than that, and her strength was actually at the 9th level of the giant spirit realm. Tian didn't know that the name Gu Wuyo was simply a legend in the Great Chu Empire. Gu Wuyo's parents were both soldiers of the Great Chu Empire, and both died on the battlefield. Gu Wuyo was born on the battlefield and lost her parents at a young age. She grew up under the care of countless soldiers, so even though she was a woman, her blood was more masculine and domineering than an ordinary man's. Gu Wuyo officially entered the battlefield at the age of 8, and she was already a somewhat famous general at the age of 12. By the age of 16, she was already a famous and ever-victorious general. So not only was she the only female general of the Great Chu Empire, but she was also the youngest general in the history of the Great Chu Empire. Gu Wuyo was transferred back to the imperial city by the emperor at the age of 18 to serve as the commander of the imperial guards. It had been more than a year since then. But Gu Wuyo's reputation as a general was too great. So even though she was now the commander of the imperial guards, the people of the Great Chu Empire still addressed her as General Gu. General Gu, they want to kill me. Please save me. Seeing that his savior was here, Lu Jinyuan knelt and crawled over with tears and snot, looking extremely pitiful. Gu Wuyo's eagle-like sharp gaze swept across the crowd and finally landed on Duanmu Lu, because it was the latter who had attacked Lu Jinyuan earlier. He said coldly, "What's going on? Why do you want to kill him?" Duanmu Lu looked at Gu Wuyo and was actually stunned for a moment. He immediately reacted and said, "Miss, you've misunderstood. I don't want to kill him. I just want to destroy his yuan meridians." Tian was speechless. He thought to himself, "My silly disciple, is there a big difference between destroying one's yuan meridians and killing someone? In Duanmu Lu Gu Duanmu Lu Lu there, Duanmu Gu Tian Gu was Gu and Gu Gu Gu." However, in Gu Wuyo's eyes, Duanmu Lu's act of crippling Lu Jinyuan's yuan meridians was no different from killing him. In fact, it was even crueler than killing him. And, at this time, Duanmu Lu opened his mouth again, but he didn't finish his sentence. "What else?" Gu Wuyo shouted cold. Duanmu Lu was startled and seemed a little embarrassed. He stuttered, "And that is, what is it?" When Gu Wuyo saw the man acting so bashful, she couldn't wait to pry open the man's mouth and pull the following words out of his mouth. "Also, castrate him," Duanmu Lu said quickly, not daring to look at Gu Wuyo's reaction. Tian was speechless. He almost knelt down in front of Duanmu Lu and thought, "My dear disciple, is it really necessary to say this out loud?" Gu Wuyo didn't feel uncomfortable at all. He stared at Duanmu Lu and shouted, "Raise your head and tell me, why did you do this?" Duanmu Lu was dazed for a second and turned to look at Tian with a pleading look. Tian directly turned his face away, pretending he didn't see it. Gu Wuyo was talented, strong, and had a good character. However, he had some difficulties in communicating with others. "General Gu, it's not this young master's fault." At this time, Li Jiao heir finally came out and said to Gu Wuyo, it was young master Lu Jinyuan and his men who flirted with this little girl. This young master just couldn't stand it, so he helped them. "Huh?" Gu Wuyo glanced at Li Jiao heir's clothes, then scanned the crowd with his sharp eyes. Although no one spoke, they all nodded subconsciously, indicating that Li Jiao heir was telling the truth. Gu Wuyo was very smart. He glanced at Lu Jinyuan and immediately guessed what had happened. He scolded in a cold tone, "A dog can't stop eating *T. Lu Jinyuan had flirted with Gu Wuyo in the Crown Prince's palace a few days ago, so Gu Wuyo naturally knew what he was like. Flirting with girls in the street was a common thing for Lu Jinyuan. "Did you kill that person?" Gu Wuyo looked at the corpse not far away and asked Duanmu Lu. This corpse was killed by Tian, and it had nothing to do with Duanmu Lu. However, Duanmu Lu was very honest, so he definitely wanted to take the blame for his teacher. He nodded and said, "Yes, I killed him. Liar. Gu Wuyo shouted coldly. He pointed at Nye Tian and said in a deep voice, this person was obviously killed by him. Huh? Nye Tian was slightly startled. He immediately smiled and said, General Gu, don't make irresponsible remarks without evidence. Gu Wuyo looked cold at Nye Tian and said, this person is at the 9th level of the all-manifestation realm. Among those present, only the two of you have the ability to kill him. The position where he fell before he died was in a straight line with yours. This means that you were the one who killed him. Oh, Nye Tian was slightly surprised. He couldn't help but praise. General Gu's observational skills are indeed amazing. I admire you. Gu Wuyo was able to guess that the killer was Nye Tian just by looking at the position where the person fell before he died. This kind of observational and analytical skills were indeed very impressive. Duanmu Lu was also stunned. He looked at Gu Wuyo speechlessly. His expression seemed to be saying, Miss, can't you just let me take the blame for my teacher? Seeing that Nye Tian had already admitted to killing someone, Gu Wuyo seemed to be thinking about something. She asked coldly, who are you people? Why have you come to my great Chu empire? Gu Wuyo looked at Nye Tian and Duanmu Lu's age and then looked at their strength. They were obviously not ordinary people. Therefore, she had reason to suspect that Nye Tian and Duanmu Lu might be spies from another country. Nye Tian glanced at Gu Wuyo. He knew that she was overthinking. He chuckled and said, we're not from your North Sea region. We're from the South Mountain region. The South Mountain region had nothing to do with the North Sea region. Nye Tian said this to dispel Gu Wuyo's suspicions. The North Sea region and the South Mountain region are thousands of miles apart. Why have you come to my great Chu empire? Gu Wuyo continued to ask. Nye Tian smiled calmly and said, I heard that the scenery in the great Chu empire is pretty good. Let's go sightseeing here. What do you say? Travel? The doubt in Gu Wuyo's eyes deepened. She said coldly, you're from the South Mountain region. You have nothing to do with this girl. Why did you save her? Nye Tian smiled faintly. He pointed at Duanmu Lu and said fiercely, this companion of mine has a strong sense of justice. He can't stand injustice. Wherever he goes, he wants to stick a shiny label on his forehead. I represent justice. Is this reason enough? Chapter 393. I represent justice. Is this reason enough? Nye Tian's words were sharp and powerful. Well said. The onlookers raised their eyebrows, and someone actually shouted. Immediately, thunderous applause sounded. Everyone looked at Nye Tian and Duanmu Lu with satisfaction and praise. Some people started to discuss in low voices and pointed at Lu Jinyuan. Lu Jinyuan bullies people all day long just because he's a relative of the emperor. He's really despicable. The two young masters' attacks just now were really satisfying. Lu Jinyuan should have been taught a lesson long ago. He's like dog sh*t. If it wasn't for his brother-in-law, who's the crown prince, he would have been torn into pieces and turned into ashes. I wonder how General Gu will handle this. Is he afraid of the crown prince's power and doesn't dare to touch Lu Jinyuan? I don't think so. General Gu is famous for being an iron-blooded general in the army. Now that he's the commander of the Imperial Guards, he must also hate evil. Nye Tian heard the crowd's discussion and raised his eyebrows. He looked at Gu Wuyo with a slightly proud expression. Gu Wuyo frowned and pointed at Duanmu Lu. She looked at Nye Tian with a serious expression and said, I believe he's fighting for justice. But you're killing people with grass. Nye Tian's expression flickered with astonishment. Why was it that Duanmu Lu was fighting for justice, but when it came to him, it was killing people with grass? General Gu. Nye Tian didn't panic at all. He said, don't tell me you like my companion because he's handsome and you're bullying me on purpose. Nye Tian raised his eyebrows and said seriously, do I look easy to bully? Teacher, don't. Hearing Nye Tian's words, Duanmu Lu was so embarrassed that he turned into a young man in love. His face was so red that it even reached his ears. Seeing Duanmu Lu's reaction, Nye Tian rolled his eyes and laughed in his heart. It was a wise choice to bring Duanmu Lu out. Otherwise, the journey will be much less fun. Gu Wuyo's expression was calm. His gaze shifted between Nye Tian and Duanmu Lu and he said with a serious expression, "He's indeed more handsome than you. It's not strange that I like him." Huh? Nietion's eyes widened, and he said in his heart, "Female general, you're not only handsome, but also aggressive. Even if you really like Duanmu Lu, you don't have to say it in front of so many people. You're flirting with my precious apprentice." Hearing Gu Wuyo's words, Duanmu Lu's ears turned as red as a pig's ears, and his face was as red as a monkey's butt. Nietion looked at Duanmu Lu carefully. This young man was indeed very handsome, and he was honest and cute, which made him very attractive to girls. "My handsomeness is abstract, and ordinary people can't see it." Nietion thought for a while, then defended himself. Speaking of Nietion's appearance, he was at most above average. He could only be called handsome, but he was still far from being a handsome man. Luckily, with the dignity of the god of war, he was more domineering, which made up for his lack of handsomeness. You have to be bold and unrestrained just because you're abstract. Gu Wuyo looked at Nietion and said coldly, "That's not a good reason to kill people." Nietion was speechless. What was she talking about? Gu Wuyo's words actually got tangled up in the topic. "Miss, you misunderstood me. My teacher didn't kill people because of his abstract appearance." At this moment, Duanmu Lu stood up. The redness on his face had faded a little, and he explained on Nietion's behalf very seriously. Nietion rolled his eyes. Even if Gu Wuyo wasn't abstract, she still looked abstract. Then why did he kill people? Gu Wuyo asked coldly. "Because of anger," Duanmu Lu said honestly. "Humph." Gu Wuyo sneered coldly and said seriously, "He killed people because of anger. Isn't that killing people?" "How can?" Duanmu Lu still wanted to say something, but was stopped by Nietion. Nietion looked at Duanmu Lu with a depressed face and thought to himself, "Duanmu Lu, you're not a disciple, you're a little ancestor. If you continue to explain, I'm afraid I'm going to become a world-destroying monster." At this time, Gu Wuyo suddenly frowned and asked Nietion, "Are you his teacher?" She had heard Duanmu Lu call Nietion teacher just now, and thought that she had heard it wrong. Now that she saw Duanmu Lu being so respectful to Nietion, she couldn't help but feel strange. Nietion's strength was only at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm, while Duanmu Lu's strength was at the 4th level of the giant spirit realm. Moreover, the two of them were similar in age, so it would be more appropriate to call them brothers. "Don't you think so?" Nietion smiled and asked back. Gu Wuyo said coldly, "It's indeed rare to see a teacher who is worse than his student. This doesn't seem to have anything to do with General Gu." Nietion didn't explain anything, and his face became slightly more serious. He said, "General Gu, I did kill him. Just tell me how you want to punish me." Nietion could see that with Gu Wuyo's military style, even if he killed someone who deserved to die, he still killed someone. Therefore, he definitely had to be punished, but he didn't know what the punishment was. Gu Wuyo said coldly, "It's a serious crime to kill someone on the streets in the Imperial City. According to the secret law, you should be sent back to the prison and wait to be executed." Executed? Hearing Gu Wuyo's words, everyone's eyes widened. Nietion killed someone who deserved to die. Shouldn't he be rewarded? Why did he have to be executed? "Young lady, the people my teacher killed were bad people. They were people who deserved to die. Should they be executed as well?" Duanmu Lu finally said something useful. "Good people are people, bad people are also people. They are all human lives. There is no difference," Gu Wuyo said coldly. "Umph." Nietion chuckled and asked back, "General Gu, on the battlefield, companions are people, and enemies are also people. They're all human lives. Is there no difference?" "Huh?" Gu Wuyo frowned and didn't know what to say for a while. He shouted in a deep voice, "You are twisting words and forcing logic. Teacher, let's go." Duanmu Lu was also angry. He said to Nietion and was ready to leave immediately. Li Jiao Air was scared at this time. She wanted to ask them to stay, but she didn't know what to say. If Nietion and the others left at this time, Li Jiao Air and her family would be completely doomed. "Leave?" Nietion smiled slightly and immediately looked at Lu Jinyuan coldly. "This guy hasn't been dealt with yet. How can I be willing to leave? You still want to kill me?" Lu Jinyun noticed the cold, killing intent in Nie Tian's eyes, and his whole body trembled in fear. It's not that I still want to kill you, it's that I never give up. Nie Tian smiled coldly and glanced at Duanmu Lu, who immediately understood. Chapter 394. Swoosh, swoosh. Two streaks of sword chi tore through the air and attacked from two different directions. Each of them carried a dense, killing intent that caused people to shiver in fear. Gu Wuyo was caught between a rock and a hard place. She could sense that Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu's sword chi were extraordinarily powerful. Given her strength, it wouldn't be easy for her to block them at the same time. Gu Wuyo didn't make a move. The two streaks of sword chi pierced through Lu Jinyun at the same time. Lu Jinyun had two bloody holes on his body. Blood gushed out like a fountain. He wanted to say something, but he didn't have the chance to. Now, he didn't need to worry about his Yuan meridians being destroyed anymore. He would die immediately. Seeing this scene, everyone was terrified. The Crown Prince's brother-in-law, a member of the royal family, had died in front of them. The visual impact was shocking. Gu Wuyo glared angrily at Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu as she roared. "How dare you two?" Nie Tian smiled and said, "General Gu, don't you want him to die too? Why are you being so pretentious?" Gu Wuyo had the chance to save Lu Jinyun, but she didn't. She was obviously trying to kill him with a borrowed knife. Gu Wuyo was in the 9th level of the Giant Spirit Realm. It wasn't easy to block Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu's sword chi, but it wasn't difficult either. Unfortunately, she didn't do anything. She was obviously going easy on them. Gu Wuyo was a little angry that Nie Tian saw through her. She indeed didn't want to save Lu Jinyun. She chose to watch him die. It wasn't because Lu Jinyun had flirted with her a few days ago. It was because she thought that Lu Jinyun deserved to die. Lu Jinyun had a notorious reputation in the imperial city. He used his identity as a member of the royal family to act arrogantly and do whatever he wanted. If he was allowed to live, many girls in the imperial city would suffer. This was the real reason why Gu Wuyo didn't save Lu Jinyun. "Teacher, let's go." Seeing that Lu Jinyun had died, Duanmu Lu called out again and prepared to leave. With Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu's strength, if they wanted to leave, Gu Wuyo wouldn't be able to stop them. However, Nie Tian didn't plan to leave at all. He looked at Gu Wuyo and said, "General Gu, I killed the Crown Prince's brother-in-law. Put me in prison now." Huh? Gu Wuyo looked at Nie Tian with a strange expression. In reality, she had already made plans for Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu to escape. In any case, even if the two of them escaped, the Emperor would at most blame her for her incompetence. However, Nie Tian's current actions greatly puzzled her. Not only did he not run after killing someone, he even took the initiative to ask to be locked up. Was there something wrong with this person's brain? Nie Tian didn't want to leave because he didn't want to implicate Li Jiao heir. If Lu Jinyun died, the Crown Prince would go crazy. If he couldn't find the murderer, he would definitely vent his anger on Li Jiao heir. Moreover, Nie Tian also wanted to meet this so-called Crown Prince of Great Chu. If he didn't get rid of this guy, he wouldn't feel at ease. "General Gu, let's go. Take me to your prison. To be honest, I rarely go to such a place. I'm itching to go." Nie Tian looked at Gu Wuyo, who was still in a daze, and smiled. There was no fear on his face, and he was indescribably relaxed. Gu Wuyo frowned even more. Nie Tian clearly knew Lu Jinyun's identity, but he still asked to go to prison. His brain must have been kicked by a donkey or squeezed by a door. Gu Wuyo knew that Lu Jinyun was not only the Crown Prince's brother-in-law, but also the Lu clan was a big clan in Chuyang City. The Lu clan leader only had one son, Lu Jinyun. If Nie Tian went to prison, would he be able to come out alive? "Teacher, you..." Duanmu Lu had a confused look on his face. "It's okay. Have confidence in me." Nie Tian smiled faintly, and then said to Gu Wuyo, "My precious disciple doesn't need to go to prison. I can go alone. Anyway, General Gu, you also like him. Why don't you take him in while I'm not here?" Gu Wuyo frowned even more. He looked at Nie Tian with a very strange look, and thought to himself, why isn't this guy afraid at all? He still has the mood to joke at this time. Duanmu probably didn't understand what Nie Tian meant this time, so his expression didn't change much. Gu Wuyo stared at Nie Tian for a long time, and finally made sure that the latter was serious. Then he said, "Come with me." "Okay." Nie Tian agreed happily. His face was actually full of excitement and joy. It didn't look like he was going to prison, but was clearly going to the bridal chamber. Under everyone's shocked gazes, Nie Tian and the other two disappeared. After a while, Gu Wuyo took Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu to a secluded alley. "General Gu, aren't we going to prison?" Nie Tian saw Gu Wuyo stop and frowned. "You can go now," Gu Wuyo said, cold with his back to Nie Tian, as if he didn't hear Nie Tian. Although Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu had killed Lu Yuan, Gu Wuyo didn't plan to arrest them. "General Gu, I'm a murderer. Why are you willing to let me go?" Nie Tian was a little surprised and asked again, "Are you leaving or not?" Gu Wuyo said coldly. Apparently, he was a little angry. "Of course not," Nie Tian said without hesitation. The crown prince behind Lu Yuan hadn't come out yet. If Nie Tian left now, it would be ridiculous. "Are you really going to prison?" Gu Wuyo suddenly turned around and stared at Nie Tian with his sharp eyes. There was confusion, surprise, and anger in his eyes. "Of course." Nie Tian's expression didn't change as he said with a plain tone, "I have to go to Heaven Prison. Do you know what kind of place it is?" Gu Wuyo's eyes sparkled. "I've been the commander of the Imperial Guards for so many years, and no one has ever come out of prison alive." "Oh." Nie Tian was slightly surprised, and then he said with joy, "Then I have to go and have a look." "You." Gu Wuyo saw Nie Tian's reaction, and he wanted to curse. "General Gu, don't worry." Nie Tian smiled. "I care more about my life than you do. Since I dare to go to prison, I have the confidence to come out." Gu Wuyo stared at Nie Tian's eyes for a long time, and he couldn't help but feel shocked. After a while, Gu Wuyo finally chose to compromise. He said with a hint of helplessness, "Since you want to die, I can only fulfill your wish." The three left the quiet alley, and this time, they really went to the Imperial prison. Half an hour later, the three appeared at the gate of the Imperial prison. Gu Wuyo put shackles on Nie Tian. The shackles weighed thousands of kilograms, and Nie Tian sensed that there was a third-rank spiritual formation inside. Chapter 395. Gu Wuyo froze when he saw Nie Tian's rare, serious expression. "General Gu, I want to see the Emperor of Great Shu before I die. Can you do that for me?" Nie Tian asked in a deep voice, his face somewhat grim. "See the Emperor?" Gu Wuyo's voice changed, and a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. "Yes." Nie Tian had expected Gu Wuyo's reaction, but he still nodded seriously. What was the most difficult person to see in this world? It wasn't the sect masters of the major sects or the patriarchs of the aristocratic families, but the emperors of the various empires. Empires were different from sects and aristocratic families. In sects and aristocratic families, the strongest person was usually the sect master, and the patriarch. But in empires, the emperor wasn't usually the strongest person in the country. This created a common problem among emperors: fear of death. Because they weren't strong, the emperors were afraid of death and rarely met them. When Nieyuro was kidnapped, Nie Tian had to ask the crown prince to meet the emperor of Blue Cloud. Otherwise, he would have to barge into the palace. The emperor of Blue Cloud was only the emperor of a third-rate empire, but the emperor of Great Shu was the emperor of a first-rate empire. It was even more difficult to meet him. Moreover, Nie Tian was a stranger from the Northern Sea region, and he was a sinner. It was almost impossible to meet the emperor. When Nie Tian said he wanted to see the emperor, Gu Wuyo's eyes were filled with killing intent. He even suspected that Nie Tian was an assassin, saving someone for no reason, entering the imperial prison shamelessly, and now he wanted to see the emperor. Nie Tian's actions were strange no matter how he thought about it. "General Gu, don't misunderstand. I'm definitely not an assassin. I just want to talk to your emperor about the crown prince." Nie Tian could naturally tell what Gu Wuyo was thinking. Talk to the crown prince? Gu Wuyo's eyes were filled with mockery. His expression was clearly saying, "Who do you think you are? The sect master of Battle Cloud sect? Do you want to interfere in the affairs of Great Chu? I can't do it. Gu Wuyo didn't hesitate and refuse cold. She was not heartless, and she really cannot do it. To suddenly bring a prisoner on death row from the celestial prison to see the emperor, this action almost made people think of it as a rebellion. Yet Tian knew that Gu Wuyo really didn't have the ability, so he could only look at Duanmu Lu. He curled his lips and said, Duanmu Lu, since General Gu can't help, you have to think of a way to meet the emperor. My life is in your hands. Whether or not I can see the emperor depends on you. Teacher, there was actually a trace of sorrow in Duanmu Lu's expression, and then he nodded heavily and said, Don't worry, teacher. Even if I have to risk my life, I'll surely let the emperor of the Darchu dynasty see you. Gu Wuyo frowned slightly and looked at Duanmu Lu speechlessly. He said in his heart, Can't you see that your weird teacher is teasing you? To be honest, Nie Tian couldn't be considered to be teasing Duanmu Lu. Although he entered the celestial prison and wasn't in any danger, the matter of meeting the emperor of the Darchu dynasty really fell on Duanmu Lu's shoulders. This fellow, Duanmu Lu, was too straightforward. Leaving this matter to him was also a form of training. Okay, teacher's life is in your hands. You must let me see the emperor of the Darchu dynasty. Nie Tian nodded heavily, and his expression was tense. After he finished speaking, he turned and walked towards the celestial prison. Looking at Nie Tian's back, Duanmu Lu's eyes were already filled with hot tears. He said solemnly, Teacher, don't worry. I definitely won't let you down. Seeing Duanmu Lu's sorrowful expression, Gu Wuyo was speechless. This pair of teacher and disciple is simply the weirdest of weirdos. The teacher is as slippery as a loach, and the disciple is as straightforward as an old bull. Nie Tian's figure quickly disappeared, but Duanmu Lu was still looking at him with a sorrowful expression. Let's go. Gu Wuyo looked at Duanmu Lu and couldn't help but shake his head and frown. He directly turned Duanmu Lu's head around and said rudely, Go. Duanmu Lu finally reacted and asked blankly, Where are we going? Think of a way for your weird teacher. Beg Master to pray to Bodhisattva and see how we can let him see the emperor before he dies, Gu Wuyo said with a sigh. His tone was extremely helpless. Although she refused verbally, Gu Wuyo would still help Nie Tian. Just now, when she saw Nie Tian's gaze, that kind of strong confidence, it made her, a soldier who came from the battlefield, shiver. Therefore, she concluded that Nie Tian definitely couldn't be an assassin. Furthermore, this Duanmu Lu in front of her was also a weirdly honest person. If she relied on him to think of a way for Nie Tian, he would most likely barge into the palace. Great Chu was a first-rate empire, and the security of the palace was unimaginably tight. There were tens of thousands of imperial guards and countless imperial secret guards. If Duanmu Lu were to barge in, it was guaranteed that not even a speck of his corpse would be left. Gu Wuyo didn't know why, but she had a strange feeling about Duanmu Lu. She had an impulse to help him. Thank you, miss, Duanmu Lu said gratefully. I'm Duanmu Lu. I haven't asked for your name yet. Gu Wuyo replied coldly. She thought to herself, You're really wooden. You live up to your family name. Carefree. What a good name. I'm guessing that your younger sister must be called Gu Wuyo. It was very rare for Duanmu Lu to actually make a corny joke. Gu Wuyo was speechless. She couldn't be bothered to respond to him. On the other side, Nie Tian was led by two jailers into the Great Chu heavenly prison that he had been dreaming of. This was a dark and serene passage. On both sides, there were cells that looked like iron cages. The prisoners in the cells on both sides ran out and stretched their hands out of the cages. All of them seemed to be extremely excited. Look, there's new meat again, and it's a handsome young man. Yeah, look at his small appearance. He's very handsome. His skin is also fresh and tender. I wonder who is lucky enough to be in the same cage as him. I'm so jealous. Someone will be able to enjoy himself at night. The two jailers heard the prisoner's shouts and laughed. Then, they glanced at Nie Tian from time to time, as if they wanted to see the latter wet his pants in fear. Unfortunately, Nie Tian was as calm as a pool of stagnant water. He didn't react at all and completely ignored the shouts around him. Actually, Nie Tian had some reaction in his heart. He thought to himself, these prisoners have good taste. They can actually see that I'm handsome. Soon, after passing through many iron doors, Nyetian was brought to a place without any light. Then, the two jailers laughed. Then, one of them went to pull a short and heavy iron door. Clatter, clatter. With the sound of iron chains being pulled, the iron door was opened. Dazzling light shone in. Then, a tsunami of shouts came in like an excited crowd. One of the jailers behind Nyetian gave him a hard shove. "You dog! How dare you kill the crown prince's brother-in-law? You must be tired of living. Go to hell." Cold, sinister laughter echoed out. Chapter 396. Nyetian couldn't help but be stunned when he sensed the bloody aura. He immediately focused his eyes and saw 4 blood-red beasts standing in front of him. The 4 beasts' bodies were like iron towers. When they stood up, they were 20 meters tall. Their bodies were dark red and emitted a bloody aura. They looked similar to the violent ape, but they were even wilder than the violent ape. Nyetian calmed himself down and enlarged his field of vision. Only then did he realize that he was standing at the edge of an underground fighting ring. The spectators in the stands around him were shouting at the top of their lungs, their cheers echoing like a tsunami. "Stinking brat, now that you've entered the blood-death arena, just wait for the demonic sanguine apes to tear you apart." The voices of 2 jailers resounded from the small door behind him. When Nyetian heard them mentioning the Crown Prince, he immediately understood what was going on. It seemed that the Crown Prince had already received news of Lu Jinyuan's death. He had already arranged everything in the imperial prison and was just waiting for Nyetian's arrival. Nyetian never expected that there would be a blood-death arena in the imperial prison of the Great Chu Empire. What was even more bizarre was that there were so many spectators in the blood-death arena. Roar! At this moment, the 4 demonic sanguine apes let out violent roars. Bulging veins could be seen on their tower-like bodies, making them look even more bloodthirsty and violent. Hiss! Nyetian sucked in a breath of cold air and guessed, these demonic sanguine apes are definitely rank 4 spirit beasts. Judging from their aura, they're much more ferocious than ordinary rank 4 spirit beasts. Their true combat strength is definitely comparable to a high-level giant soul realm martial artist. Tear him apart. Tear him apart. Tear him apart. The spectators on the spectators' stand let out sinister laughter. The moment Nyetian was torn into meat paste by the demonic sanguine apes was the moment of their greatest excitement. Shit! Nyetian cursed in his heart. Originally, with his strength, dealing with 4 demonic blood apes wouldn't be a problem. However, he was currently wearing shackles, and there were Tier 3 restriction spiritual arrays on the shackles. At this moment, Nyetian still had 2 third-ranked astral souls. However, due to the suppression of the 3rd-ranked spiritual array, it was difficult for him to even revolve his Yuan Qi. It was impossible for him to use the power of his astral souls. Roar! Bang! 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 The demonic blood ape let out a loud roar. It was filled with killing intent. Then, it strode forward madly, causing the ground of the bloody death ground to tremble slightly. F***CK. Nyetian furiously cursed and forcefully circulated his origin energy. His feet executed the swan steps, dashing left and swaying right, his figure nimble. Boom! A demonic sanguine ape swung its huge palm over, and the baleful aura that was coming towards Lin Yun actually formed a few streaks of blood red in the air, causing the air to tighten. Nyetian fiercely stomped his feet, and his body moved several meters to the side. However, he was still hit by the murderous aura. On his arm, several frightening wounds immediately appeared, and blood gushed out. **T. Nyetian couldn't help but feel nervous. The demonic blood apes were bloodthirsty and violent. Now that they smelled blood, they would definitely become even more violent. Bang! 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 As expected, the 4 demonic blood apes smelled the fresh blood in the air and immediately punched out with their huge fists, creating huge craters on the ground. The 4 demonic blood apes rushed over like 4 small mountains, and the violent aura they emitted made it hard for Nyetian to breathe. Master, Little White, and I will hold them back. Hurry up and release the shackles. At this time, the corpse demon lord's voice came from the chaos origin coffin. Following that, two small figures appeared. They were the corpse demon lord and the snow fox mirage. Little White was the name that the corpse demon lord had given to the snow fox mirage. Because Nyetian's yuan qi was being suppressed, the ninth extreme chaos beast couldn't unleash its power. He could only rely on the corpse demon lord and the snow fox mirage. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two figures flew towards the four demonic blood apes at lightning speed. The corpse demon lord and the snow fox mirage were only the size of a fist. In front of the 20-meter demonic blood apes, they were like flies and mosquitoes. The snow fox mirage was extremely fast. Its small body crashed into the face of one of the demonic blood apes, leaving a bloody scar. The corpse demon lord also crashed into the chest of another demonic blood ape and started to chew on it. Two of the demonic blood apes were enraged. They swung their huge fists randomly, causing the other two demonic blood apes to go crazy as well. The four demonic blood apes swung their claws randomly in the air, but the corpse demon lord and the snow fox mirage were too fast. They couldn't catch them at all. This sudden scene caused the whistling sounds in the surroundings to weaken significantly. The crowd looked at the four demonic blood apes in a daze. They didn't know what was going on. Nyetian finally had a chance to catch his breath. He immediately sat down cross-legged and forcefully circulated the yuan qi in his body. He tried to find the core of the restriction spiritual array within the shackles. Then, he started to bombard the core with waves of yuan qi. When the crowd saw Nyetian suddenly sit down, there was a momentary silence in the blood death arena. No one knew what was going on. The four demonic blood apes seemed to have lost their minds. They actually started to dance on the spot. Wong! At this moment, a huge bell suddenly rang in the blood death arena. Then, there was a series of rattling noises. In midair, two huge iron cages appeared. The crowd saw that there were two more demonic blood apes in the iron cages. They were even bigger than the four demonic blood apes in the blood death arena. Tear him apart! Tear him apart! Immediately after, the crowd became even more excited, and the sound of cheering could be heard again. On a high platform in the spectators' stands, a gorgeous figure was gazing at Nyetian from afar with a pair of cold, gloomy eyes. The face belonged to a man in his mid-20s. He was handsome, but his eyes were extremely gloomy. Beside him, a middle-aged man with a handlebar mustache smiled and said, "Your Highness, don't worry. The demonic blood ape king's strength is comparable to a warrior at the peak of the giant spirit realm. No matter how powerful that kid is, there is no way he can walk out of the blood death arena alive." This young man was none other than the crown prince of the great Chu Empire, Wang Haowei. Wang Haowei's malicious eyes stared at Nyetian. His voice was extremely cold. He raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "How dare you kill the people around me? You're courting death." Yes. I don't know where this stinky kid came from. He actually dared to kill young Master Lu. He really doesn't know what's good for him. The Blood Death Arena's Deacon Wang, Jin Tao, said with a smile. The dignified crown prince wouldn't come to a place like the Blood Death Arena easily. He had to seize the opportunity and serve him well. Since Nyetian was someone the crown prince wanted to kill, Wang Jintao naturally couldn't let him live. The Blood Death Arena. As long as you enter the Blood Death Arena, don't think about walking out alive. Boom! Boom! At this moment, the two huge iron cages shook and opened. Bang! Bang! The two demonic blood ape kings, which were over 30 meters tall, smashed down like two mountains. The entire Blood Death Arena shook. In an instant, endless killing intent spread out. Chapter 397. Nyetian broke free from the shackles and stood up abruptly. However, he didn't look at the demonic blood ape king. Instead, he raised his head and locked his gaze on Wang Haowei. Wang Haowei suddenly felt a chill down his spine when he noticed that Nyetian was looking at him. He even had goosebumps. However, he wasn't weak as he was already in the 9th level of the giant spiritual realm. He calmed down and looked at Nyetian as he muttered, "Stinking brat, who are you?" Nyetian's gaze made Wang Haorui feel fear. Furthermore, he didn't know how Nyetian could sense his existence. Nyetian didn't show any fear in the deathly blood arena. He stared at Wang Haorui and said, "You must be the crown prince behind Lu Yuan, right? I can only say that you're unlucky to have met me." Nyetian wanted to enter the heavenly prison because he was waiting for this crown prince to appear. He guessed that if he was sent to the heavenly prison, this crown prince would definitely come and visit him. As expected, Wang Haorui didn't disappoint Nyetian and came early. Seeing that Nyetian seemed to be saying something, Wang Haorui knitted his brows, and the killing intent in his heart became even more resolute. "Stinking brat, this crown prince will definitely not allow you to live. Your Highness, are you all right?" Wang Jintao was nervous when he sensed the killing intent coming from Wang Haorui. Wang Haorui ignored him and sat down. He wanted to personally witness the scene of Nyetian being torn apart by the demonic Blood Ape King. Only then would he be able to dispel the hatred in his heart. The appearance of the two demonic Blood Ape Kings in the Deathly Blood Arena caused the baleful aura to become even denser. The Corpse Demon Lord and Snow Mirage Fox's speed was affected, and they were almost caught by the demonic Blood Ape Kings. "Whitey, Master has broken free from the shackles. Let's go." When the Corpse Demon Lord saw that Nyetian had stood up, he screamed and charged towards Nyetian. The Snow Mirage Fox was actually able to understand the Corpse Demon Lord's words. Her body was like a bolt of lightning as she charged into Nyetian's body. Very good. When Nyetian saw that both the Cadaver Demon Lord and the Snow Phantom Fox were fine, he smiled faintly. His lips curled into a strange arc as the heaven-severing slash appeared in his hand. He roared furiously, "Red bastards, let me cut open your stomachs today." Roar. The 2 and 4 Blood Demon Ape Kings seemed to understand Nyetian's words. They roared in anger, and waves of murderous aura gushed out like invisible ripples. Nyetian felt a slight discomfort in his chest and couldn't help but say, "The Blood Demon Ape King is indeed powerful. If I were an ordinary giant martial artist, I reckon I would have difficulty breathing." Nyetian's current strength was at Giant Spirit Level 3, and he had awakened the power of 2,560,000 stars in his body. Unless his opponent was a true energy boundary cultivator, he would be able to suppress his opponent without even using his astral souls. Nyetian estimated that the Blood Demon Ape strength was equivalent to a Giant Spirit Level 5 cultivator, and the Blood Demon Ape King strength was equivalent to a Giant Spirit Level 9 cultivator. 4 Blood Demon Apes and 2 Blood Demon Ape Kings. Even a true energy boundary cultivator would find it troublesome. However, in Nyetian's opinion, it was only enough for him to practice. Swish! As Nyetian thrust out his sword, a piercing sword chi pierced through the air towards one of the Blood Demon Apes at an inconceivable speed and struck it. Boom! The Blood Demon Ape was struck by the sword chi, and a bloody hole appeared on its arm. Roar! The Blood Demon Ape let out a painful howl and charged towards Nyetian without caring about anything else. The other Blood Demon Apes also charged over and surrounded Nyetian before charging out in a frenzy. Good timing. Nyetianling's expression turned cold. He took a step forward and his figure flew up. Countless sword chi flew out like arrows, and a murderous sword chi surged in all directions. The 6 Blood Demon Apes were hit by the sword chi, and their bodies were blocked. Countless sword wounds appeared on their bodies as blood gushed out. The scene was extremely tragic. Seeing this scene, the cheering crowd fell into a deathly silence. Wang Jintao, what's going on? Is this all your Blood Demon Ape Kings have? Wang Haorui stood up with a gloomy expression as he angrily berated. Your Highness, please calm down. Wang Jintao was also drenched in cold sweat. A Giant Spirit Level 3 youth was actually able to block the attacks of 4 Blood Demon Apes and 2 Blood Demon Ape Kings at the same time. This was simply too unbelievable. Your Highness, the Blood Demon Ape Kings are a little abnormal. Please don't be anxious. This little one believes that they will be able to tear that brat apart. Wang Jintao explained, but even he himself didn't believe it. In the bloody death field, war god Imperial Fist, Tian was dozens of meters in the air. All the energy in his body surged as he threw a punch at one of the blood demon apes. Boom! The huge fist was like a mountain in an ocean. It sent one of the blood demon apes flying. Its huge body fell down, and it could no longer get up. Tian had the power of 2,560,000 stars in his body. Even if he didn't use any martial skills, he could still wield the power of one dragon. Combined with the power of the war god Imperial Fist, he was even more domineering. Seeing one of their companions being knocked down with a single punch, the other blood demon apes were stunned for a moment. There was a momentary sluggishness in their ruthless eyes. Tian took the opportunity and threw out another 3 punches. Boom, boom, boom. With 3 muffled sounds, the other 3 blood demon apes fell to the ground, unable to get up. How is this possible? Wang Jintao, who was watching the battle from the high platform, was drenched in cold sweat. He couldn't believe his eyes. Tian was clearly in the third sky giant spiritual realm, but he actually knocked down a blood demon ape with a single punch. It was simply unimaginable. Wang Haowei looked at Tian. The coldness on his face was even more obvious. The stronger Tian was, the greater his desire to kill him would be. If he couldn't see Tian die today, Wang Haowei would definitely feel a thorn in his back. He wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. With the 4 blood demon apes dead, the 2 blood demon ape kings were left. The 2 blood demon ape kings charged over. The death of their companions made them even more berserk. The dense aura of blood surged out like torrential waves. Tian did not knit his brows. He circulated his yuan meridians, and the sword aura on his sword surged. With a slash, a 100-meter-long sword ray flew out. Pung! A blood demon ape king's head was directly smashed into pieces by the sword ray. Blood splattered everywhere. When the other blood demon ape king saw this scene, its violent eyes actually revealed a look of fear. However, before it could react, another huge sword shadow slashed down. Its 30-meter-long giant body was actually cut in 2. Blood spurted out like a fountain and shot into the air. When the crowd saw this bloody scene, the thunderous cheers came to a stop. Countless gazes looked at the figure in the deathly bloody arena. It was as if they were looking at a bloodthirsty demon god. An indescribable fear surged in their hearts. Tian didn't care about these people. His figure flickered as he flashed past the corpse of the blood demon ape. When he stopped, there were 6 blood-red cores floating in his palm. 4 of them were slightly smaller, while the other 2 were slightly larger. The 6 cores were the spiritual cores of the blood demon apes. There was even blood dripping from them. Chapter 398. Wang Haowei sensed that Tian was looking at him, and his face became even more gloomy and bloodthirsty. Wang Jintao, is this the power of the demonic blood ape king? Wang Haowei roared angrily, the muscles on his face twitching uncontrollably. Your Highness! Wang Jintao shuddered and knelt down, trembling as he said, This brat's strength is too strange. The sanguine demon ape king's battle prowess is comparable to a 9th-level giant spirit martial artist, but it couldn't even block a single sword strike from this kid. This is really beyond this little one's expectations. Wang Haowei's eyes darkened as he asked, What other fierce beasts are there today? Put them all into the blood death ground. This crown prince doesn't believe that a mere 3rd-level giant spirit realm martial artist can really defy the heavens. Wang Jintao gulped and said with a troubled expression, Your Highness, the demonic blood ape king is already the strongest beast in the blood death ground. The muscles on Wang Haowei's face twitched. Your Highness. Wang Jintao's face turned pale with fright, and he quickly said, In a few days, the vicious beast arena will send a 3-toed violent bear. The 3-toed violent bear is a 5th-order spirit beast, and its strength is comparable to a true element boundary cultivator. It will definitely be able to tear this little brat apart. A few days later, This crown prince can't wait a single day. Today, this brat must die. Wang Haorui's eyes were cold. He suddenly turned to Wang Jintao and coldly said, "If he doesn't die today, then you will." Wang Jintao swallowed his saliva, and the cold sweat on his face flowed down to his neck. "Your Highness." Suddenly, Wang Jintao seemed to think of something, and fear flashed in his eyes. He lowered his voice and said, "Why don't we lock this kid up with the human demon?" Human devil? Is it the legendary man-eating guy? Wang Haorui obviously knew who the human demon Wang Jintao was talking about was. At first, he was stunned, but then he smiled coldly and said in a heavy tone, "Let's do it." Human demon. This was a monster in the celestial prison. He was locked in the lowest level of the heavenly prison, living in darkness every day. Every prisoner who was locked up with a human demon only had one fate: to be eaten by a human demon. Wang Jintao looked at Nietian and laughed coldly in his heart. "Stinking brat, you caused me to lose a good opportunity to curry favor with the crown prince. I will feed you to the demons." Nietian looked at Wang Haorui and Wang Jintao from afar, not knowing what they were talking about. However, he couldn't make a move yet. After all, this was the imperial prison. Who knew how many experts were hiding here? These experts were the final trump cards of the Darchu imperial clan, and they would surely not come out at ordinary times. Moreover, they only obeyed the orders of the emperor, and even the crown prince, Wang Haorui, was unable to mobilize them. Boom! A moment later, the iron door behind Nietian opened. The two jailers saw that Nietian was alive and well, with only a few minor injuries. The shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. "Follow us!" The two jailers shouted, but they didn't dare to approach Nietian. Nietian didn't say anything. He left the blood death arena and entered the iron gate. Following behind the two jailers, Nietian quickly arrived at the other end of the prison. Swoosh! Within the dark passageway of the prison, the two jailers worked together to pull open an iron door on the ground, and a hidden entrance to the dungeon appeared. Nietian frowned slightly. A foul smell surged out from the dungeon, and it seemed as if it was a rotting slaughterhouse below. "Go down!" The two jailers moved aside and allowed Nietian to enter the dungeon. Nietian thought for a moment, and he sensed that there was actually an extremely formidable aura at the bottom of the dungeon. This aura seemed to have been restrained, but Nietian's perception was formidable, and he was still able to sense how terrifying it was. This aura within the dungeon is actually even stronger than that member of the Heaven Burial Association that killed Elderly, yet it seems to be suppressed by some sort of force. Who exactly is this person? Nietian started to ponder in his heart, and at the same time, he was weighing if he should enter the dungeon. He knew that there were surely experts of the Great Chu Empire standing guard within the dungeon. If he caused a ruckus in the dungeon, then it would surely draw the experts to make a move. At that time, it would be very bad, and that aura at the bottom of the dungeon made Nietian very interested. The person who killed Elderly was called Wei Yangzi, and Nietian had once heard Long Sky call out his name. Wei Yangzi's strength was much greater than Duanmu Bai's, and the latter was a peak figure in the South Mountain region. The person in the dungeon seemed to be even more terrifying than Wei Yangzi. With such strength, even in the Shumi spirit capital, he would certainly be a prominent figure. How could such a figure appear in the heavenly prison of the Great Chu Empire? Thinking of this, Nietian's curiosity grew even stronger, and he no longer hesitated, stepping into the dungeon. As Nietian walked down, the two jailers directly closed the dungeon door. One of the jailers chuckled and said, "This stinking brat definitely doesn't know the power of the human demon. Tomorrow, we'll wait to collect his corpse." "Collect his corpse?" The other jailer laughed instead and said, "The human demon will definitely eat him until there's nothing left of him. How could he leave his corpse?" "That's true." The two looked at each other and smiled, then hurriedly left. Nietian walked in the dungeon. There wasn't a bit of light in the surroundings, but fortunately, his perception was strong. Even in a situation where his eyes couldn't see, he could still clearly feel the steps under his feet. After walking about 100 steps, yet Tion finally arrived at the bottom of the dungeon. This dungeon is a bit deep. It's actually built tens of meters underground. Tion murmured. Just as he lifted his foot, he discovered that there seemed to be a sticky liquid under his feet, causing him to involuntarily frown. Finally, there's food. Ha! Just at this time, an insolent and ruthless laughter suddenly rang out in the dungeon. Soon after, a fishy smell assaulted his nostrils, and it was abnormally pungent. Tion felt a powerful aura wandering in the surroundings. With his divine sense, he actually couldn't capture the specific location of that aura. Puff, puff, puff. The origin energy in his body surged, and 3 flames ignited on Tion's palm. With a light wave, they expanded into 3 fireballs, floating in midair. Suddenly, the dungeon became brighter, and he could clearly see the huge stone pillars. Tion looked at the ground and was shocked to discover that there was a dark red sticky liquid under his feet, emitting a rotten and bloody smell, as if there were corpses rotting in the water. When he looked forward, his face couldn't help but change. In front of him, there were actually countless skeletons with rotten flesh hanging on them. Looking at the shape, they were actually human skeletons. What is this place? Why are there so many corpses? Tion became cold, and his divine sense spread out, trying to capture that tyrannical aura. Kid, you're actually not afraid? At this time, a strong wind blew against his face. Tion subconsciously took a step back. Focusing his eyes, a strange face appeared, and it was actually facing him, less than half a meter away. Tion saw that the face's eyes were actually under the nose, and couldn't help but be stunned. He couldn't help but take a few steps back. Only then did he see clearly that it was actually a human face hanging upside down. Hee. The next moment, the face moved and opened its mouth to speak. Little guy, you're actually an alchemist. Your meat must be very delicious. Chapter 399. Hearing the man's words, Tion did not show any signs of fear and only frowned slightly. He calmed himself down and carefully looked at the upside-down face in front of him. Unkempt hair and a face full of beard. Although it was very dirty and emitted a strong stench, that pair of eyes was unusually spirited. Even in this filthy and smelly dungeon, there was still a sense of dignity in his eyes that could not be violated. Pretending to be mysterious can only fool ordinary people. Tion's eyes were calm and cold. The man in front of him was simply a human, and he was actually a demon pretending to be a human. What a joke. That face suddenly changed, 2 eyebrows squeezed together and turned upside down, revealing his body. He seemed to be quite surprised and said, "Little kid, you're really not afraid of me. You're not a demon or a ghost, but a human like me. I have no enmity with you, so why should I be afraid of you?" Tion looked at the man in front of him and said calmly. At this moment, he finally saw the man's full face. This was an old man. Although his beard was thick, the contours of his face could still be seen, and he looked very resolute. His hands were actually holding onto 2 heavy chains. Upon closer inspection, the 2 chains were not wrapped around his body. Instead, they were pierced through his shoulder blades. Just by looking at them, one could imagine the unbearable pain he was in. But his face was calm, and there was no sign of pain, as if he was used to this kind of pain. When Tion looked at the man, the latter was also looking at him. His face revealed a slight surprise, but he immediately laughed. "Young man, you're indeed very unusual. You're only a teenager, but you're already in the 3rd stage of the giant spirit realm, and you're even a sword-heart swordsman. With such talent, even in the insufferably arrogant Sumi spirit capital, you could be considered a top talent." That person paused for a moment, looked at the 3 fireballs floating in the air, and continued, "Moreover, you're a pill master. Looking at your adept control of fire, you should be a 4th-tier pill master without a doubt. A teenage 4th-rank pill master. Even that old thing Meng Fanshun wouldn't be able to cultivate such a person. Speak. Who exactly are you?" That person's eyes suddenly turned sharp, and his whole body released a surging, killing intent. A wave of pressure enveloped Tion. When Tion heard this person's words, His eyes flashed with surprise. Meng Fanshen was the leader of the Alchemist Guild. Even the patriarchs of the four great clans would have to respectfully address him as Mr. Meng. Just who was this person? He dared to call Meng Fanshen an old geezer without the slightest hint of respect in his eyes. It was as if he didn't take Meng Fanshen seriously at all. Nie Tian suppressed the shock in his heart, completely ignoring the other party's pressure, and said indifferently, "My name is Nie Tian, and I'm not some big shot. I'm just a small city lord in the Nanshan region. On the other hand, Senior, your aura is vigorous and your strength is unfathomable. A person like you should not be a nobody in the 3,000 small worlds. I'm curious, who are you?" Even though the person before him was in the dungeon, his aura was extremely dense, making it impossible for him to sense it. Every time Nie Tian's divine sense probed over, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, vanishing without a trace. Hence, he estimated that this person's strength was at least above the 5th tier of the Divine Wheel Realm. The 5th tier of the Divine Wheel Realm. Even the inner elders of the four great clans might not have such strength. How could such a person be trapped in the dungeon of the Great Chu Empire? That person stared at Nie Tian. When he saw that Nie Tian didn't panic at all, and even asked him a question in return, he couldn't help but laugh loudly. Nie Tian, I consider myself the most arrogant person in the 3,000 small worlds. I didn't expect you to be even more arrogant than me. Even in a place like this, you are actually not afraid of someone who is far stronger than you. I admire your courage. Seeing that although this person was a little crazy, he didn't seem like an unforgivable devil, Nie Tian became even calmer. He looked at the corpses around him and asked, "Did you kill these people on the ground?" That person glanced at Nie Tian and wasn't angry. He said, "Some of them were scared to death, some of them committed suicide, and some of them were killed by me." Humph. That person laughed strangely and said arrogantly, "It's ridiculous that those ignorant people said I was a man-eating devil. How stupid. If I was really a devil, would there still be people alive in the entire Great Chu Empire?" Nie Tian was silent in his heart. With this person's strength, if he really wanted to start a massacre, not only the Great Chu Empire, but even the entire North Sea would be turned into a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. "Senior, who are you?" Nie Tian asked again. That person laughed crazily. There seemed to be some sorrow in his expression. He said loudly, "It doesn't matter who I was. I don't want to talk about the past anymore." Nie Tian nodded slightly. He couldn't force the person to tell him if he didn't want to. After all, everyone had their own secrets. "Nie Tian, you just said that you are from the Nanshan region. Why did you come to the Great Chu Empire? And even to the Heavenly Prison?" That person suddenly thought of something and asked with interest. Nie Tian didn't hide anything and briefly told him what had happened. That person laughed crazily after hearing that and said, "Nie Tian, you are really arrogant at such a young age. You actually came all the way to the North Sea to gain experience in Chaos City. You are courageous and insightful. The younger generation will surpass us in time. You killed a relative of the Emperor and offended the Crown Prince. There must be someone who wants you dead, so they threw you together with Ida Borrow Eye's hand to kill you. These aristocratic families are all treacherous people. None of them are good." Speaking of this, that person seemed angry. He waved his hand and said, "But don't worry. I won't kill you, and I will help you leave this place." "Senior, I don't want to leave yet," Nie Tian said with a faint smile. "You don't want to leave?" That person was taken aback and immediately smiled and said, "That's good. I hasn't talked to anyone for a long time. With you here, I won't be too lonely." Nie Tian nodded and asked, "What's your name, Senior?" "My surname is Yi. You can call me Elder Yi." That person was very heroic and said loudly, "Nie Tian, you are courageous and insightful and have monstrous talent. In the future, you will definitely become a great person. It's best if you can beat all those birdmen in Su Mi Ling City." "Elder Yi flatters me." Nie Tian smiled faintly and immediately said, "Elder Yi seems to be very prejudiced against the people of Su Mi Ling City. Did they offend you?" "Of course. That year, when I stepped into Sumi Ling City, he challenged the geniuses of Sumi Ling City. Who knew that? Elder Yi suddenly stopped halfway. He chuckled and waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about the past. Since Elder Yi doesn't want to talk about it, it's not convenient for me to ask." Niet Tian frowned slightly and immediately looked at the two iron chains behind Elder Yi. Niet Tian looked carefully. On the two iron chains, there were actually light golden runes engraved densely, emitting a faint incantation aura. A layer of faint incantation power flowed on the iron chains and was actually constantly absorbing the power in Elder Ye's body. The more Niet Tian looked at the incantation on the iron chains, the more familiar it was. He frowned in thought, but couldn't remember for a moment. Chapter 400. Devil's Sealing Curse. Niet Tian exclaimed in his heart. His expression changed, and he was very excited. Yes, it's the Devil's Sealing Curse. Devil's Sealing Curse was a kind of evil curse of the fiend race. Those who were afflicted with the curse would no longer have their strength increase. At the same time, their spirit energy would be constantly devoured by the curse. As time passed, their strength would continuously decline. Not only had Niet Tian seen this kind of curse before, he had even experienced it personally. Back then, Fiend Emperor Qi Wu Xiaotian had once released it on his body. Unfortunately, it did not succeed. Niet Tian used a day's time to remove the Devil's Sealing Curse. Although it was just a day's time, Niet Tian's strength was significantly affected. He spent a full half a month before completely eliminating the continuous damage caused by the Devil's Sealing Curse. At this time, the iron chain on Elder Ye's body was very similar to the curse that Qi Wu Xiaotian released back then. It was just that it was far less terrifying than Qi Wu Xiaotian's curse. It seemed to be a kind of weakened Devil's Sealing Curse. It could only be considered a minor Devil's Sealing Curse. But even if it was a minor Devil's Sealing Curse, the kind of pain was absolutely unimaginable to ordinary people. The Devil's Sealing Curse iron chain pierced through Elder Ye's shoulder blade. It absolutely had a suppressive effect on his strength. It would even cause his strength to continuously decline. Niet Tian did not know how long the iron chain on Elder Ye's body had existed for, but this kind of pain, he could withstand it. His willpower was simply unimaginable. "Niet Tian, what's wrong?" Elder Yi saw Niet Tian's expression change again and again. He could not help laughing and asked. Niet Tian suppressed the shock in his heart and asked directly, "Elder Yi, how did the iron chain on your back come about?" Elder Yi chuckled and did not want to explain, but he saw that Niet Tian's expression was serious and seemed to know something. Elder Yi's expression slowly changed. He seemed to recall something and said solemnly, "The iron chain on my back is called Death God Iron Chain. This is a big gift that my good brother gave me 40 years ago." Niet Tian looked at Elder Ye's gloomy and angry expression. He naturally understood that his last good brother was definitely a great enemy. 40 years. Elder Yi had actually lived with the Grim Reaper's chain for 40 years. My God, what pain he must endure in the meantime. No wonder he didn't have any reaction when the Grim Reaper's chain pierced through his shoulder blade. After a while, Niet Tian slowly calmed down and said, "Elder Yi, why didn't you ask for the Death God medal? Take it off?" Elder Yi forced a smile and said, "Of course I want to take it off. This Death God Iron Chain not only suppresses the increase of my strength, but it also continuously devours my origin energy. Over the past 40 years, my strength has dropped from the 6th tier of the Divine Wheel to the 2nd tier of the Divine Wheel. There's not a day that goes by that I don't want to claim Thanatos. However, the runes within the chains firmly shackled my elemental meridians. If I were to forcefully remove the chains, my elemental meridians would also be destroyed. Even if he could survive, he would become a cripple. Isn't this exactly what my good brother wants?" At this point, Elder Yi clenched his fists tightly. Waves of origin energy were released, and it was cold and murderous. If the Death God Iron Chain remained on his back, Elder Yi could still live and preserve his strength. If the chains were taken off, he would become a cripple that was worse than an ordinary person. He could endure the pain, but if his elemental meridians were destroyed, then he would have no hope of taking revenge in this lifetime. That was what he truly couldn't accept. As expected, Nietian calmed down. He suddenly looked at Elder Yi and said solemnly, "Elder Yi, I have a way to help you remove the death god Iron Chain. At the same time, your elemental meridians won't be damaged. Little friend Nietian, although you and I have met happily, if you use this moment to make fun of I, don't blame I for falling out with you." Elder Yi looked at Nietian cold. Naturally, he didn't believe that Nietian could remove the death god Iron Chain. In order to remove the death god Iron Chain, Elder Yi had begged countless experts, but unfortunately, no one could help him. Furthermore, the person who left the death god Iron Chain on him once said that among the 3,000 small worlds, apart from him, no one knew how to remove the death god Iron Chain. In order to escape from that person's pursuit, Elder Yi hid in the Great Chu Empire's heavenly prison. That person would never have thought that Elder Yi would actually hide in such a place. Nietian, however, wasn't afraid at all. He straightened his chest and lightly said, "Elder Yi, do I look like I'm joking?" Elder Yi stared at Nietian for a full 10 seconds. When he was sure that the latter wasn't joking, his eyes couldn't help but suddenly widen as he said, "You really know how to remove the death god Iron Chain?" Nietian nodded solemnly. If it wasn't for the fact that the other party was a good person, Nietian wouldn't have bothered to talk nonsense with him. "Little friend Nietian, is what you said true?" Elder Yi was still doubtful, but the joy in his eyes couldn't be suppressed. There were even sparkling and translucent tears glistening in them. It had been 40 years. He had been tortured alive by the death god Iron Chain for 40 years. At this time, seeing the hope of removing the death god Iron Chain, how could Elder Yi not be excited? Nietian had been poisoned by the devil sealing curse in his past life. It was just a trifling devil sealing curse, so he naturally knew the method to remove it. The method to break the devil sealing curse lay in two extremes, the cold of ice and the intense of fire. Using an extremely cold object to combine with an extremely hot object could remove the devil sealing curse. In his past life, Nietian used the 10,000-year ice soul combined with the 9 heavenly fire to remove the devil sealing curse with the dual effects of ice and fire. This was one of the 3,000 small worlds, so it was impossible to have something like the 10,000-year ice soul. Nietian was not at the heavenly emperor realm at this time. Even if he cultivated the 9 heavenly fire art, it was impossible for him to extract the true 9 heavenly fire. Hence, it was absolutely impossible to use these two things to remove the devil sealing curse. However, the curse on Elder Yi's body was not the authentic devil sealing curse, but a greatly weakened version. Otherwise, after being afflicted with the devil sealing curse for 40 years, it would be impossible for Elder Yi to even reach the elemental meridian realm, let alone have the strength of a second-tier spirit wheel. Nietian thought for a moment and said, "If I want to remove the death god Iron Chain, I need 2 things." "Speak." Elder Yi's eyes were wide open. "The 1,000-year ice soul and the fire lotus fruit," Nietian said with a nod. The curse on Elder Yi's body was the minor devil sealing curse, and the 1,000-year ice soul and the fire lotus fruit were both 6th-tier medicinal herbs. However, these 2 things were not easy to find. Even the top chambers of commerce in the Martial Gathering Merchant Union did not have them. Perhaps only the Sumi Ling City Alchemist Guild had them. "All right, I will go find these 2 things now." Elder Yi was already impatient and didn't want to delay for even a moment. He couldn't wait to get these 2 things immediately. Nietian was slightly stunned and said, "Do you know where to find these 2 things?" "Of course I know." Elder Yi laughed and said, "As long as these 2 things exist in the 3,000 small worlds, they will definitely be there." "You're that confident?" Nietian was taken aback. Of course, Elder Yi couldn't hide the excitement in his heart. He cupped his hands and said, "Mr. Nye, I will leave the prison now to find the things you want. I will take my leave." This time, even the way Elder Yi addressed Nietian changed. Chapter 401. Hee, Mr. Nye, just watch." Elder Yi smiled mysteriously and opened his palm. A broken saber appeared in his hand. It looked simple and heavy, and it emitted a strong saber aura. When the broken saber appeared, An invisible force immediately spread out. It was powerful, and it gave people a feeling that it was endless and boundless. Feeling the spread of this force, Niet Tion's expression changed, and he cried out, "Saber force." Niet Tion's perception was correct. This was the saber force derived from the saber intent. To be able to easily derive such a powerful saber force, Elder Ye's Saber Dao realm was at least at the saber spirit. The saber Dao was the same as the sword Dao. It was divided into saber moves, saber techniques, saber aura, saber heart, saber intent, saber force, saber spirit, saber soul, saber spirit, saber intent, saber intent. Elder Ye's realm was actually at the saber spirit. This was something that Niet Tion had never expected. No wonder his aura was so powerful. Even under the suppression of the demon's sealing curse, it was still difficult to conceal his majesty and domineering aura. "Mr. Nye, be careful," Elder Yi reminded, and then he shouted in a deep voice, "Break!" Boom! Suddenly, a huge force shot up into the sky and bombarded the sky. F***CK. He's going to break through the dungeon. Niet Tion was quite surprised. He quickly retreated, and then he activated the extreme wood jade sky armor. Boom! In the next moment, the huge force bombarded the top of the dungeon, and a big hole was opened up. If one was outside, one could see a huge layer of the map being lifted up and shot hundreds of meters into the sky. Then, like a mountain, it landed on the Bloody Death arena. Elder Ye's saber directly opened up a big hole in the dungeon. Light shone in, and it looked like an underground cave. Niet Tion was stunned, and it took him a long time to react. The power of this saber was really shocking. "Mr. Nye, I've caused too much of a commotion. The hidden experts of the Darchu Imperial family will arrive soon. Leave with me." Elder Yi looked up and spoke to Niet Tion. Niet Tion frowned. He had to leave even if he didn't want to. With Elder Yi causing such a ruckus, those experts of the Darchu Imperial family would surely swarm out. At that time, if they were unable to capture Elder Yi, then they would have to vent their anger on Niet Tion. "All right, let's go." Niet Tion nodded. Elder Yi waved his hand, and a strand of saber chi appeared, enveloping Niet Tion like a bubble and slowly rising. "That's not bad. It saves me the trouble of using the proud sword heavenly wings." Niet Tion smiled faintly. He was happy and relaxed. At this time, more than a dozen black figures appeared above the two of them, all standing in the air. Obviously, they were all true element boundary masters. "Who is it? How dare you behave atrociously in my great Chu empire? Madman, get the hell out here for I. You'll pay the price for provoking the dignity of the Darchu imperial family today." A few voices sounded out, and then more than a dozen air-piercing forces blasted down. Niet Tion saw it clearly. Every single one of those forces carried true element boundary chi, and if any one of them hit him, even if he didn't die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. Fortunately, he didn't force his way into the imperial prison. Otherwise, he would surely die without a trace. "Haha, good. I just happen to be bored to death, so I'll use you to exercise my muscles." Elder Yi laughed madly as he casually raised the broken saber in his hand and slashed out. Bang! Instantly, a boundless saber chi rose up and directly broke through the countless attacks above him. A shocking saber image that was hundreds of meters in length soared into the sky and blasted out. Bang! 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 Ah! 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 In the next moment, a muffled sound came from above, followed by countless screams. Niet Tion couldn't help but be surprised. Elder Ye's strength was too strong. With just a casual move, he directly beat more than a dozen high-level true element realm martial artists to the point of dizziness. It was truly terrifying. "Mr. Nye, let's go." Elder Yi smiled faintly. He took a step forward and his figure rose from the ground. Niet Tion immediately followed, and the two of them directly rushed out. Elder Yi and Niet Tion's figures froze in midair, and around them were numerous martial artists in black who were holding their chests and vomiting blood. These were all the elite hidden guards of the Darchu imperial family, and all of them were at the true element realm. However, in front of Elder Yi, they could only be little sheep. Who exactly are you? One of the men in black, who wasn't very heavily injured, took a step forward and spoke coldly. You're not worthy to know I's name. Elder Yi laughed madly and said, This dungeon has imprisoned I for dozens of years. Today, it's destroyed, and we're even. Mr. Nya, let's go. After speaking, Elder Yi looked at Nye Tian, and his voice became respectful. He was still counting on Nye Tian to save his life. Nye Tian nodded and looked at the surrounding people in black with a sympathetic expression. These people probably didn't even dream that there was actually such a madman imprisoned in the heavenly dungeon. I'm warning you, don't follow me, or else you'll lose your life. Elder Yi shouted coldly. Immediately after, his figure moved, and he left with Nye Tian. The dozens of men in black looked at the direction where the two of them left, and didn't dare to move for a long time. Quickly go and inform His Majesty. After a long time, a man in black finally reacted and shouted in panic. Nye Tian and Elder Yi flew more than 10 kilometers away from the heavenly dungeon and finally stopped. Elder Yi, you go and look for the things, I won't go with you. I still have a friend here. If I disappear, he will be worried, Nye Tian said. He didn't intend to follow Elder Yi to look for the Millennium Ice Soul and the Fire Lotus Fruit. Who knew where Elder Yi could find him? Nye Tian still had to bring Duanmu Lu to continue his training. Moreover, the Great Chu Empire's matter wasn't over yet, and there was still the Crown Prince waiting for Nye Tian to deal with. All right, Elder Yi nodded and immediately asked, Mr. Nye, I will be gone for at most 5 days, at least 3 days. When he returns, where can I find you? 3 to 5 days? So soon? Nye Tian couldn't help but be stunned. The Millennium Ice Soul and the Fire Lotus Fruit were both rank 6 medicinal herbs. Even if Elder Yi was a spirit wheel expert, he wouldn't be able to find them so easily, unless he knew where to find these 2 items and went to get them directly. Elder Yi smiled and said, To be honest, I and Meng Fanchen are friends. If the Magic Pill Makers Guild has these 2 items, he will definitely give them to me. Oh, Nye Tian was stunned again. Of course, he knew that Meng Fanchen was the president of the Magic Pill Makers Guild. However, the Millennium Ice Soul and the Fire Lotus Fruit weren't small items. If Meng Fanchen was willing to give them to Elder Yi directly, it meant that the 2 of them weren't ordinary friends. If you come back, you can go to Chaos City to find me. With your strength, it shouldn't be difficult to find me. Nye Tian thought for a moment and said, Chaos City? Elder Yi was stunned for a moment. He seemed to be a little hesitant, but he still nodded and said, All right, it's a deal. I will take my leave now. After he finished speaking, Elder Yi's figure flashed and disappeared. Who exactly is this guy? He actually has a friendship with Meng Fanchen. Nye Tian looked at the direction where Elder Yi disappeared and muttered to himself. At this moment, Elder Yi's voice suddenly sounded in Nye Tian's mind. It was actually the latter who transmitted his voice. Mr. Nye, my name is Yi Linyan. Yi Linyan. Nye Tian was slightly stunned and muttered, I seem to have heard this name before. Damn. Nye Tian thought hard and suddenly remembered. He shouted, Frenzy Blade. Chapter 402. Nye Tian looked at the direction in which Elder Yi disappeared, and finally remembered who he was. Killing Blade. Yi Linyan. The first time Nye Tian heard of this name was at the Yuan Chamber of Commerce in Danwu City. At that time, the chief appraiser invited by the Yuan Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yifeng of the Lin family, was auctioning the second half of the Wild World-defying blade technique. 80 years ago, he was the peerless swordsman who challenged all the geniuses of Su Mi Ling City. Nye Tian still remembered that Xiao Shan was very emotional at that time, and in the end, the second half of the Wild World-defying blade technique was also in his hands. No wonder. Why do I feel that the aura of the blade on Elder Yi is similar to Qiu Shan's aura? They actually cultivated the same blade technique. Nye Tian muttered to himself, but his expression slowly changed strangely. It seems that Qiu Shan has a ring on his hand, and there are 2 words on it, Ling Yun. Thinking of this, Nye Tian frowned even more and felt strange. Could it be that Qiu Shan and Yi Linyan are related? Qiu Shan and Yi Linyan. Not only were they related, but they were also very close. The two of them were directly related by blood. Unfortunately, Tian did not know this. He had never asked about Qiu Shan's background, and the latter had never told him. Moreover, one of them was called Qiu Shan, and the other was called Yi Linyun, no matter how he thought about it. I can't think of anything right now. I'll ask Elder Yi when he comes back. Tian nodded, and suddenly realized that the sky was getting dark. Tian thought that if he went to look for Duanmu Lu now, it would not be easy to find him, so he would wait until tomorrow. Although Duanmu Lu did not have much experience and was a little dull, he was very shrewd. Moreover, the female general seemed to have a good impression of Duanmu Lu and seemed to care little. Presumably, she would not watch Duanmu Lu do anything stupid. Tian walked on the streets of Chuyang City, preparing to find a hotel to stay in. At this time, the night had just fallen on the streets of Chuyang City, but it was actually more lively than during the day. As the imperial city of the Great Chu Empire, Chuyang City was undoubtedly the most prosperous city in the Great Chu Empire. This kind of super big city always maintained a lively atmosphere, be it day or night. Tian's interest was piqued. Looking at the bustling scene around him, he became more and more excited as he walked. After a while, he suddenly discovered that he had arrived at a street that was even more luxurious and noisy than other places. Just as he stood on the side of the street, he actually smelled a strong scent of cosmetics. Countless people around Tian were running into the street. They all had wretched smiles on their faces, as if they were going to do something bad. Tian took a look and immediately understood that the street in front of him was definitely a gathering place for the brothels of Chuyang City. Both sides of the street were filled with gorgeously dressed girls. Sigh. Tian looked at the hurried people around him, diving into the arms of those girls. He couldn't help but sigh and shake his head, saying, "Wine is the poison, lust is the bone scraper." Saying this, Tian prepared to leave. "Get out of the way." At this time, a carriage suddenly rushed out. The driver shouted, "It's the carriage of the Crown Prince's residence. Get out of the way." Upon hearing the coachman shout, the young masters all gave way to him. Tian frowned slightly and dodged to the side of the road. Looking at the carriage speeding over, he said, "This Crown Prince is really arrogant. Even a driver is so domineering. A dog that threatens its master's power." Tian didn't want to pay any more attention and turned to leave. "Let me go. Woo." Just as the carriage sped past him, a woman's cry suddenly came from inside the carriage. But it only made one sound, as if someone had covered her mouth and she couldn't make a sound. The carriage sped past and stopped at the largest brothel on the street. There was a big sign on the door, which read, 10,000 Spring Courtyard. Tian slightly frowned and said in his heart, "That cry just now, why did it sound a bit familiar?" At this time, two men jumped down from the carriage, unexpectedly carrying an unconscious girl. "It's her." Although separated by a distance, Tian clearly saw that the unconscious girl was not someone else. It was the girl who was molested by Lu Jinyuan during the day, Li Jiao Air. Bastard. Tian was smart and immediately guessed what was going on. The carriage belonged to the Crown Prince's residence, so these people must be from the Crown Prince's residence. Lu Jinyuan died because he molested Li Jiao Air. The Crown Prince not only wanted to find Tian for revenge, but also Li Jiao Air. At this time, this innocent girl must be sold to the 10,000 Spring Courtyard. This Crown Prince is worse than a beast. He didn't even let a little girl go. Tian roared in his heart and immediately walked over. Since he had already intervened in this matter, he naturally couldn't watch Li Jiao Air be sold to a brothel. Tian walked over and spread out his divine sense. He immediately noticed that there were many strong people lurking around. This was the brothel of Chuyang City, so there must be many watchdogs, and there was no lack of strong people among them. Yet Tian suppressed the anger in his heart and calmed himself down. He walked on the street like an ordinary person. On the street, both sides were full of hot girls wearing revealing clothes. Each of them was gorgeously dressed, waving their handkerchiefs. Their faces were charming and full of amorous feelings. "Io, mister," Come to me quickly. Life is short. We should enjoy ourselves while we can. My kung fu is very good. I will definitely serve you comfortably. Yes, sir. Don't be shy. I am waiting for you here. Oh, sir, your eyes are popping out. Am I so beautiful? Oomph. If you like me, come in. Wave after wave of women with heavy makeup used all kinds of tricks to attract customers. Those who came to this kind of place at this time were all foppish young masters, rich young masters, and unlucky people who were dissatisfied with their married life. Nie Tian's appearance among these people was a little eye-catching. He looked to be about 16 or 17 years old, with a handsome face, tall and straight posture, and firm eyes. Experienced girls could tell at a glance that this was his first time here. Seeing Nie Tian walking towards them, the girls on the street all called out to him, their eyes burning with desire. If they could spend a night with such a man, even if they had to pay for it, they would be willing. But Nie Tian didn't look sideways and turned a blind eye to these calls. He walked leisurely until he reached the 10,000 spring courtyard before stopping. At this time, the people in the carriage of the Crown Prince's residence had already entered, and the carriage was taken away by the servants of the 10,000 spring courtyard. As soon as Nie Tian came to a stop, a group of beautiful women walked towards him, all of them wearing light garments, their curvaceous bodies exuding a soul-stirring temptation. Nie Tian looked up at the women in front of him and couldn't help but blush. Although he had lived 2 lives and was already a 200-year-old monster, he only loved Luo Xian in his previous life. However, in his previous life, he only loved Luo Xian, but he died on the night of their wedding night. In this life, he was not of age yet. So Nie Tian was really not familiar with the matters between men and women. Chapter 4:03. Nie Tian clenched his fists and said in his heart, "Calm down." He had never been so nervous when he was alone in the forbidden areas of the Heaven Realm, but now he was sweating profusely. If his disciples saw him like this, it would really be shameful. Taking a deep breath, Nie Tian calmed down, looked at the girls in front of him, and said in his heart, "No wonder so many people come to this kind of place." The women in front of him were all extremely charming. Even he couldn't help being tempted, not to mention those young masters. "Oh, this handsome little brother. Who are you looking for? Let this servant serve you, okay? I guarantee you'll want to die from pleasure. After the first time, you'll want to do it again." Just as Nie Tian calmed down a little, a woman with a mouth full of red powder greeted him, her voice so sweet it could melt a man's heart. Damn! Nie Tian was taken aback by this woman's initiative, taking a few steps back and almost falling. This woman's power was really strong. Even a true element boundary cultivator might not be able to force Nie Tian into such an embarrassing situation. Fortunately, Nie Tian's willpower was off the charts, otherwise, he really would have lost his dignity. "Go away, little slut. This handsome little brother likes the Ani type. Look at your small body, you're far from it." At that moment, another figure appeared. It turned out to be an auntie with a thick foundation that couldn't hide the wrinkles on her face. This auntie was even more amazing. Opening her 2 big arms, she couldn't wait to immediately hug Nie Tian in her arms. Nie Tian was scared out of his wits. He hastily dodged and followed the crowd into the legendary 1,000 Spring Courtyard. There's actually someone with such a heavy taste, really amazing. As Nie Tian walked in, he couldn't help but look back at the fat auntie. His heart couldn't help but feel a chill. Nie Tian followed behind the others and came to the hall on the first floor of the Wanshun courtyard. Unfortunately, everyone else had an acquaintance and was directly taken away by the girls, leaving Nie Tian standing there stupidly, not knowing what to do. He didn't know where Li Jiao Air would be taken, so he looked around. After thinking for a while, Nie Tian turned around and walked to the 2nd floor. "Hey, handsome, you look unfamiliar. Do you need Yao Er's help?" Just then, a sweet voice rang out. A girl in purple clothes appeared in front of Nie Tian. Nie Tian looked at the girl in front of him. She looked to be only 11 or 12 years old. Her facial features were exquisite, and it was obvious that she was a beauty. Fortunately, the woman looked normal. At the very least, she didn't pounce on him. Nie Tian looked at her, thought for a moment, then directly took out a piece of upper-grade origin crystal and handed it to her, saying, "I want to ask you something." The girl called Yaoer looked at the high-grade origin crystal in her hand. Her eyes widened, and she nodded repeatedly. Young master, please ask. As long as Yaoer knows, I will tell you everything. A piece of high-grade essence crystal was worth 1,000,000 gold coins. No wonder Yaoer was so excited. I want to know, where can I find the girl who was just sent in? Tian asked faintly. Huh? Yaoer was dazed for a second, then immediately understood. She let out a long, oh, and smiled. Yaoer, got it. Young master, you have that kind of fetish. You're only interested in virgins, right? Tian was speechless. He smiled awkwardly, then nodded. Right now, saving people's lives was more important. Reputation and whatnot could be put aside for the time being. Humph! Unexpectedly, Yaoer's face changed the next moment, and she directly scolded, pervert. Huh? Tian was dazed for a second, and couldn't react for a moment. Yaoer, are you lying again? At this time, a young man in white clothes walked over, looking at Yaoer, and seemed a little angry. Huh? Tian looked at the young man in white clothes in front of him, and he was surprised again. This young man in white clothes looked to be 15 or 16 years old. He had fair skin, a handsome face, and was a little too handsome. Also, this person's eyes were pure, as clear as water, and his noble temperament was incompatible with everything around him. Young master, Yaoer didn't lie. This guy is a pervert. He came to this kind of place and only likes virgins. Pervert, a big pervert. Yaoer retreated to the side of the young man in white clothes, staring at Tian, and said angrily, You. Tian looked at Yaoer and couldn't say anything for a long time. This little girl actually wasn't from the Wan Chun brothel. Tian had always thought that she was a girl from the Wan Chun brothel. Tian looked at the young man in front of him strangely and thought to himself, who would bring a maid to a brothel? This guy is really strange. However, when Tian carefully observed the young man in front of him, he actually smelled a light body fragrance from the latter's body. A young girl's body fragrance. The next moment, Tian's eyes slightly widened, and he almost shouted. This guy's body fragrance was definitely a young girl's body fragrance. Tian immediately understood that this guy was a young girl dressed as a man. No wonder he brought a maid to a brothel. So it turned out that he was here to play. It was very obvious that the person in front of him was the same as Tian. It was also the first time that a young girl had come to a brothel. This young master, I am Morong Xing. The person looked at Tian, slightly cupped his hands, and said in a refined and courteous manner, I am really sorry Yaoer is naturally mischievous and likes to joke around. This one apologizes to you on her behalf. It's okay. Tian was also speechless. That little girl called Yaoer, with a joke, ruined his reputation. Yaoer still didn't let it go and puckered her lips. He is a pervert. Why are you apologizing to him? Yaoer. Morong Xing glared at her, and only then did the latter stop talking. Tian no longer cared about these two weirdos and turned around to leave. This young master. But Morong Xing spoke again and called out to Tian. What else do you want? Tian didn't want to waste time and seemed a bit impatient. That. Morong Xing hesitated for a while, but still said, This is my first time coming to this kind of place. Can I invite you to go with me? Go with you? Tian almost shouted out and said in his heart, Boss, this is a brothel. Do you think you're going on a sightseeing tour? And you want to go with me? Sorry, I don't have time. Tian Lung coldly refused, and soon after, he directly left. Why are you so fierce, big pervert? Morong Xing didn't say anything, but Yaoer pouted her lips again and said, Tian didn't care about her, and directly walked to the second floor. Morong Xing looked at Tian's back, thought for a while, and said, Yaoer, let's follow him. Young miss, why do we follow him? Yaoer had a helpless expression. Morong Xing hurriedly covered Yaoer's mouth and said angrily, To see my young master. Yaoer pried Morong Xing's hand away and rolled her eyes and said snappily, Young master. Is that enough? Morong Xing nodded and said, Let's go and see what that guy wants to do. Chapter 404. Tian walked up to the second floor and was completely speechless when he realized that the strange master and servant pair were actually following him. Tian didn't pay any attention to them and continued to search around. Unfortunately, there were too many rooms in the Wan Chun courtyard. If Tian were to look through them one by one, he didn't know how long it would take. Young master, you're sweating profusely. You must be too anxious and can't suppress the evil fire in your body. At this time, a middle-aged woman's voice sounded behind Tian. Tian turned around and saw a red-clothed woman with a mole on her lips. Although she had heavy makeup, it couldn't hide her old age. She was smiling at him. "Io, what a handsome young master. First time to our Wan Chun courtyard? Let mommy help you." The woman covered her mouth and could tell that it was Tian's first time here. Tian saw the long black beard on the woman's lips and felt a chill in his heart. His face turned pale, and he thought, this place is even scarier than the land of bloody massacre. "Io, young master, what are you thinking about?" The red-clothed woman saw through Tian's thoughts and giggled. "Mommy is already 50 years old and can't stand your torment. Mommy's meaning is to help you find a good girl who will serve you well." This red-clothed woman obviously thought that Tian was a rich young master who came to the Wan Chun courtyard for the first time. This kind of person was the favorite of old mothers like them because they were easy to kill. "I want to find a girl who was just sent in. She must be a virgin." Tian directly took out 10 high-grade origin crystals and said with all his courage. In order to save Li Jiao, Tian's moral integrity was shattered. The red-clothed woman saw the origin crystals in Tian's hand, and her eyes turned red. Even in the Wan Chun courtyard, where money flowed like water, there weren't many young masters who were willing to take out 10 high-grade origin crystals as a tip. "What? You can't find her?" Tian saw that the red-clothed woman didn't respond and reminded her. "Yes." The red-clothed woman reacted and almost immediately snatched the crystal from Tian's hand. She said excitedly, "Mother, I know what young master wants. Please follow me." Tian frowned slightly and followed behind the woman in red. A moment later, the red-clothed woman brought Tian to the highest floor of the myriad spring courtyard, the 5th floor. As soon as Tian reached the 5th floor, he saw a large hall with a huge signboard hanging on the door. Butterfly Transformation Pavilion. What is this place? Tian furrowed his brows because he realized that the 2 black-robed men guarding the entrance were at the 9th level of the Giant Soul Realm. The 2 guards were at the 9th level Giant Spirit Realm. This undoubtedly meant that the Butterfly Transformation Veranda was an extremely important place. "Young master, this is the virgin you wanted." The red-clothed woman giggled and pointed at the Butterfly Transformation Veranda. Tian was even more puzzled, but he didn't think too much about it. "Stop right there. What are you doing?" The red-clothed woman led Tian over, but was stopped by the 2 guards. The red-clothed woman giggled and moved forward to whisper into the ears of one of the guards. Her voice was so low that even Tian couldn't hear what she said. The guard tilted his head and looked at Tian as if trying to confirm something. Tian didn't say anything and directly took out 10 high-grade crystal and placed it in front of the guard. "Young master, you're really reasonable." The guard chuckled and took the crystal. He bowed slightly and said, "Young master, please." Tian stepped inside. It was at this time that 2 figures rushed over in a hurry. "Holy shit, they actually followed me here. Are they done yet?" Tian didn't need to turn around to know that the 2 behind him were definitely the strange master and servant pair of Morongxing and Yao. "We want to go in as well." Yao shouted. The 2 guards glared at her and didn't pamper her. They roared, "Where did this little bastard come from? Scram! How dare you? Don't you know who our family's young master is?" Yao wasn't afraid at all. Instead, she had a domineering look. Tian shook his head speechlessly and said to the guard, "They're with me. Let them in." The guard was obviously not too willing. Tian could only take out dozens of high-grade crystal again. "Thank you, young master." Morongxing smiled politely and followed Tian in. Tian didn't say anything. He thought in his heart, What sin did I commit to provoke these two masters? Entering the hall, the scene that greeted him made Nyetian couldn't help but be stunned. In front of him was a spacious hall full of people. At the top was a very large high platform. On the high platform, there was actually an auction. Auction. It was indeed an auction. What can be auctioned in this place? Nyetian frowned slightly, his eyes flashing with doubt. It was the first time he came to such a place, and he didn't even know much about the affairs between men and women. Naturally, he couldn't guess what was being auctioned here. Myriad Spring Courtyard, Butterfly Pavilion. This was a relatively special place. Many people knew that this place was not an ordinary place to seek pleasure, but a place for people of status to find special hobbies. At this moment, the audience seats were all people of status in Chuyang City. Their eyes were all looking at the high platform in the hall for fear of missing some wonderful scene. Nyetian found a corner near the front row and sat down directly, wanting to see what would happen next. At this time, on the high platform, a 25-year-old woman walked out slowly. She had an enchanting figure and was dressed in revealing clothes. Her eyes were watery and full of charm. She glanced at the audience below the stage, covered her mouth, and smiled. Then she opened her red lips and said in a sweet voice that made people's bones tingle, "My lords, thank you for taking care of the Butterfly Pavilion's business." As she said this, 12th Maiden twisted her waist and bowed to the audience. The woman on the stage was called 12th Maiden. Most people knew her. She was the owner of Myriad Spring Courtyard, Luo Jiangjiang's mistress. And Luo Jiangjiang was also a big shot in Chuyang City, the sworn brother of the crown prince. As soon as 12th Maiden's voice fell, the guests below the stage all chatted and laughed. 12th Maiden has really become more and more beautiful these years, and she is also getting better at talking. Luo Jiangjiang is really a god. He taught her well. That's right. Lord Luo Jiangjiang is definitely a character. I admire him. I don't know where he got so many chicks. Who cares so much? I'm here to have fun. Let's see what's good today. If I like it, I'll buy it home and enjoy to my heart's content. If you dare to buy it home, your tigress will skin you alive. Seeing that the atmosphere below the stage had been stirred up, 12th Maiden smiled sweetly and said, "Dear masters, prepare your money bags. The auction is about to begin. My newly trained girls will be on the stage soon. I guarantee that their skills are extraordinary, and they are all unmarried. The old rule is that the highest bidder wins. If any master likes them and is willing to spend a lot of money, they can buy them home to play with." At this moment, Nyetian finally understood what was going on. Chapter 4:05. Nyetian was right. The Butterfly Transformation Pavilion was the place where a woman's first night was auctioned. Butterfly transformation, cocoon transformation into a butterfly. It was a metaphor for the process of a girl becoming a woman. Clap, clap, clap. On the high platform, Aunt 12 clapped her hands. Aunt 12 clapped her hands, and a small, graceful figure timidly walked out from the layers of gauze. This was a little girl who looked to be only 13 or 14 years old. She wore a purple dress with a pink ribbon tied around her waist, which made her chest bulge. Her makeup was much lighter than that of the girls on the street. Her face was young and tender, her facial features delicate, and her skin was sparkling and translucent. There was a faint blush on her little face, and her charming appearance was very lovable. Nyetian looked at the girl on the stage. There was no desire in his eyes, only endless anger. In his previous life, he had never thought that in this world, besides the rule of the strong, the filth was far beyond his expectations. In his previous life, he was used to seeing bloody battlefields. But the scene in front of him made him feel even more terrified than the mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Imagine, if the girl on the stage was your family member, how would you react? If she was Emo Rushi or Nyeyuro, Nyetian would definitely turn the Butterfly Transformation Pavilion upside down and smash it to pieces. "Gentlemen, this is Miss Ye, only 13 years old this year." At this time, Aunt 12 spoke in a very sweet voice. "Don't be fooled by Miss Ye's young age. Her figure is very good. Miss Ye just came to our Chun courtyard yesterday and is still clean. Which gentleman has taken a fancy to her? Please bid now. Every moment of the night, is worth 1,000 pieces of gold," Aunt 12 said with a smile. The girl named Ian next to her seemed very uneasy. She looked uneasily at the audience, but all she saw were greedy and wretched faces. At a certain moment, she inadvertently glanced at Nia Tian and saw that the latter's eyes and expression were different from everyone else's. She could not help but pause for a moment, but was disappointed the next moment. If Nia Tian was a gentleman, would he still come to such a place? But this scene was perfectly captured by Nia Tian, which made his heart tremble and slightly moved. Her clear and despairing eyes were a stark contrast to the chaos around her. This made Nia Tian even angrier. If it weren't for the fact that there were experts hiding here, Nia Tian would have definitely taken them away by force. The two guard dogs at the entrance of the butterfly transformation veranda were both at the 9th level of the giant spirit realm. Who knew how many more experts were hidden in the shadows? If he wanted to save them, he had to be patient. Nia Tian knew that there were too many injustices in this world. Even if he stood at the peak of the heaven realm, he wouldn't be able to take care of all the injustices in this world, let alone the fact that he was only at the giant spirit realm. However, as long as he encountered injustice, he would definitely intervene. Beside Nia Tian, Murong Ziying's expression was also very ugly. His body seemed to be trembling slightly. Obviously, he was suppressing the anger in his heart. Yu Yu's appearance caused a commotion below the stage. 100 low-grade essence crystals. I couldn't want this little beauty. At this time, someone couldn't hold back anymore and raised his hand impatiently, shouting loudly. This person was a 30 to 40 years old brawny man. He was extremely muscular, and his arms were thicker than an ordinary martial artist's thighs. However, he wasn't fat. His muscles were clearly defined and looked very powerful. Nia Tian glanced at this person and was quite surprised. This guy was actually a true element level 1 martial artist. To actually meet such an expert in this kind of place, it was really a little unexpected. Looking at this guy's build, he was definitely a strength-type martial artist. Nia Tian estimated that this guy's strength was not below his own. 100 low-grade essence crystals. How can you have the nerve to ask for it? This price can only buy a night of trash. Wanted to buy Miss Yu's first night is just wishful thinking. This young master will offer 200 low-grade essence crystals. On the other side, a youth in luxurious clothes spoke up. A pair of shifty eyes stared at Yu Yu as if his eyeballs were about to pop out. 100 low-grade essence crystals, 200 low-grade essence crystals. This kind of figure was just a coal number to some people. But to Yu Yu, it represented the most precious thing. This kind of price was too low to Nia Tian. But Yu Yu was just an ordinary girl. To be able to have this kind of price was already considered not bad. That brawny man who called himself Gooden glanced at the girl on the stage, seeming to be evaluating whether it was worth it for him to increase the price. At some point, Yu Yu's eyes revealed despair, and Gooden seemed to have noticed this. He suddenly stood up and roared, "Your father offers 1,000 low-grade essence crystals." And the moment Gooden stood up, Nia Tian immediately sensed that several tyrannical auras appeared and directly locked onto him. In the next moment, if Gooden made any strange movements, these auras would attack without mercy. Fortunately, Godan sat down again. This fellow seemed to have sensed something. Nia Tian glanced at Gooden at this time and vaguely guessed that this was probably this guy's first time coming to a place like Myriad Spring Courtyard. Gooden's bid exceeded many people's expectations, so no one else bid again. At this time, Aunt 12 smiled and was about to congratulate Gooden, but a figure stood up. It was Nia Tian. As Nia Tian stood up, the hidden strong aura appeared again. But Nia Tian didn't care. There was a faint smile on his lips as he looked at Aunt 12 on the high stage. "Mister, is there a flower on my face? It's worth looking at." Aunt 12 was obviously a veteran. She wasn't nervous and even flirted with Nia Tian. Nia Tian looked calm and said, "I want to buy the girl next to you. Name your price." "Oh." Aunt 12 was slightly stunned, then immediately smiled and said, "Miss Yu is a good girl. She's only 13 years old this year. If she stays in our Myriad Spring Courtyard, she will be a big money tree. This young master, 10,000 high-grade essence crystals." Before Aunt 12 could finish, Nia Tian directly interrupted her and said cold. Is that enough? Aunt 12 was stunned, and her whole body froze. Everyone else present was also shocked by Nia Tian's generosity and began to discuss in low voices. My dear father, 10,000 high-grade essence crystals. That's 1 million low-grade essence crystals that can buy 10,000 girls. Yeah, who's this kid? How can he be so generous when he opens his mouth? He's really going to shock people to death. I've never seen this face before. He's probably the young master of some big family. This is a real F** king tycoon. Yu is also stunned. She stared at Nia Tian, her little face petrified. She never thought that a stranger would offer such a high price to buy her. Deal? Nia Tian didn't care about the others' reactions and asked cold. Before he left Heaven Luo City, Jean de Bayo gave him a common gold card of the Martial Arts Merchant Union. There were 1 million high-grade essence crystals in it, all the profits from the Dragon Blood Martial Union. Chapter 406. It had to be said that Jean de Bayo was quite meticulous. Otherwise, Nia Tian really wouldn't know how to save her. There were hidden experts all around. If he tried to force it, it would definitely not end well. Deal. Of course, deal. Aunt 12 finally reacted. She couldn't hide her excitement and giggled. Even her chest trembled. At this time, there was no need to ask others. After all, there were not many fools who were willing to pay 10,000 upper-grade origin crystals for an ordinary girl. At this time, Aunt 12 seemed to think of something and said, Can you pay now? Aunt 12 looked at Nia Tian's ordinary clothes and was a little afraid that the latter was bluffing. She was also worried that Nia Tian didn't have that much money. Nia Tian took out the Martial Business Alliance's gold card and said, Don't worry. You'll know after using your divine sense. Aunt 12 was also a martial artist and had the strength of the manifestation realm. Naturally, she could see that this was the Martial Business Alliance's universal gold card. She also heard that this kind of universal gold card was very difficult to get. The amount of money needed to be at least 10,000 upper-grade origin crystals. It was indeed not easy for Jean de Bayo to get this card. He even asked Ao Kiki Lily and Ding Yifan for help. Otherwise, with his status, it would really be difficult. Aunt 12's divine sense probed into the gold card and felt the amount of money inside. Her mouth immediately opened wide and didn't close for a long time. Let's continue the auction. Nia Tian didn't care about her. He put away the gold card and planned to pay later. Good. Aunt 12 said good 3 times and couldn't stop smiling. She said, You can pay whenever you want. As long as you are happy, the auction will continue. When the audience saw Aunt 12's reaction, they all widened their eyes and their jaws dropped to the ground. Everyone was very curious about how much money was in Nia Tian's Martial Business Alliance Universal Gold Card to make Aunt 12 so excited. After a while, the auction continued. But the rest of the time was all Nia Tian's show. He went all out and bought all the girls on the stage. The price remained the same, 10,000 upper-grade origin crystals. At that moment, everyone looked at Nia Tian with a different expression. Where did this rich young master come from? How could he be so heroic and dazzling? Nia Tian bought more than a dozen 13 or 14-year-old girls in one breath. But his face became more and more gloomy because Li Jiao Air still hadn't appeared. On the high platform, Aunt 12 giggled. She was really happy today. She had met a sucker, and a super generous sucker. If she met a few more of these fellows, Aunt 12 would definitely wake up laughing even in her dreams. After a while, when Yatian was surrounded by more than 30 girls, his face gradually became gloomy. Li Jiao Air still hadn't appeared, which gave Yatian a bad feeling. The way Murong Xing and Yao looked at Yatian was extremely strange. Especially Yao She must have thought of Yatian as a super pervert, buying so many girls at once. Aunt 12 sold the last girl of the day. She looked at Yatian and said softly, Mister, today's auction is over. Please pay the money with me. Over? Yatian frowned and said, It can't be over. I haven't bought enough yet. This. Aunt 12's face was embarrassed and said, Mister, but there are only so many girls today. The others are not virgins. Do you want them to? Aunt 12 also regarded Nietian as a lecherous person. I only want virgins, Nietian Lung said coldly, completely with the attitude of a rich young master. He shouted, for the next girls, I am willing to pay 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals for each one. 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals. As soon as Nietian's voice fell, the whole audience was dead silent. After a long time, heated discussion sounded. Is this Mr. Crazy? How King rich is he? An ordinary girl can pay 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals that can buy a basket of girls. Yes, this guy is definitely a scammer. No matter how rich he is, he can't spend money like this. What a super prodigal. This is the rhythm of losing millions of dollars in one night. Hearing Nietian's bid, Aunt Twel was also completely stunned. Nietian's outrageous bid, of course, had a purpose. He wanted to force Li Jiao out. Nietian guessed that Li Jiao might have been detained by someone. He hoped that she was fine. Okay. Aunt Twel thought for a moment, nodded and said, Mister, please wait a moment. I will be back soon. Aunt 12 didn't want to miss such a good opportunity to make money. She heard that the Crown Prince's residence had sent a girl, and it seemed that she hadn't started yet. Maybe there was still time. Aunt 12 turned and left. Anyway, there were many strong people lurking in the dark, so she wasn't afraid that Nietian would leave without saying goodbye. I hope nothing happened, Nietian said in his heart with a worried look on his face. Pervert. Big pervert. Super big pervert. At this time, Yao looked at Nietian and said angrily. Nietian didn't care about her. Now was not the time to care about his reputation. Morong Xing looked at Nietian and didn't react. She could see the righteousness in Nietian's eyes. He definitely didn't buy these girls for pleasure, and she always felt that Nietian seemed to have an ulterior motive. On the other side, Aunt 12 turned backstage and walked into a secret room with light steps. Aunt 12 pushed open the small door of the room, and panic screams came from inside. She frowned and quickly walked in sideways. In the room, a fat man in his 30s, naked, opened his wide arms and pounced over like an eagle catching a chick. No, I beg you, please spare me. In front of him, a girl dodged left and right. She was so scared that her face turned pale, and her face was wet with tears. She screamed in panic. If Nietian could see this scene, he would definitely feel his blood boiling with excitement. This girl was none other than Li Jiao, and this fat man was the owner of Wan Chun Courtyard, Luo Jiangjiang. He was also the sworn brother of the Chu Crown Prince, Wang Haorui. Dead man, people are making money for you outside, but you're here enjoying yourself. You have no conscience. Aunt 12 saw the scene in the room and seemed to be used to it. She scolded in a sweet voice. She knew that Luo Jiangjiang was a psychopath who liked to play the game of eagle and chicken with chicks. The more frightened these chicks were, the more excited the eagle was. He liked the feeling of being an eagle. Aunt 12, don't worry. I'm just playing. Luo Jiangjiang laughed, revealing 2 rows of dark yellow teeth. Then he pounced on Li Jiao again. Chapter 407. Aunt 12 looked at the pitiful Li Jiao on the ground with a strange look in her eyes. Once upon a time, she had the same identity as Li Jiao, but now she had become an accomplice of Luo Jiangjiang. Her fate was really regrettable. Aunt 12 no longer looked at Li Jiao and directly explained the situation of the auction house. Oh, Luo Jiangjiang smiled and said strangely, there's actually such a stupid person. Then I have to go and see. Aunt 12 glanced at Li Jiao and said, that young master said he only wanted virgins and asked for 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals. This girl is also one. Let's just sell her. This. Luo Jiangjiang seemed a little embarrassed and said, she is the girl who caused young master Lu's death. The Crown Prince told me that I must do her myself, then put her in the Wanchun courtyard and be trampled by thousands of people. If I sell her and the Crown Prince finds out, I'm afraid it will be hard to explain. Aunt 12 laughed softly and said, dead man, are you so afraid of the Crown Prince? How can I say I'm afraid? The Crown Prince and I are sworn brothers, but I can't go against his will. Luo Jiangjiang said with a smile. Aunt 12 didn't give up and said, "The people from the Crown Prince's residence are all gone. Who knows where this girl came from? Our butterfly pavilion sells so many girls every day. Does the Crown Prince have the time to check the girls we can't sell every day?" But Luo Jiangjiang was still hesitant. Aunt 12 didn't wait for him to finish and said, "The Crown Prince is just angry for a while and will calm down in a few days. He won't think of this. That's 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals, which is equivalent to a 5th-rank spiritual weapon." That's right. Luo Jiangjiang finally compromised and said, "Anyway, the Crown Prince is already dealing with the murderer of Lu Yuan. Although this girl is the root of the problem, she didn't kill Lu Yuan. I don't think the Crown Prince will pay too much attention. You take her there. I'll go and see what kind of young master is so wasteful," Luo Jiangjiang said as he put on his clothes and prepared to go to the auction house to see the true face of Nie Tian. However, if he knew that Nie Tian was the one who killed Lu Yuan, who knew what expression he would have? After a while, Aunt 12's figure reappeared on the high platform of the auction house, and behind her was a crying girl. It was Li Jiaoer. "Young master, I've brought another virgin. This is what we agreed on. 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals," 12th maiden said innocently. Her voice was enough to make one's bones melt. Nie Tian saw that the girl on the stage was Li Jiaoer. At this time, Li Jiaoer's clothes were messy, and her face was covered with tear stains. Nie Tian secretly clenched his fists and was slightly moved. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "No problem. Benefactor, it's you." Li Jiaoer was surprised to see that the person in front of her was Nie Tian, but she immediately thought of something and swallowed the rest of her words. Aunt 12 sensed something and laughed. "Do you know her?" "No, I don't." Nie Tian shook his head. Aunt 12 rolled her eyes, but she was more concerned about Nie Tian's 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals, so she didn't think much about it. However, Luo Jiangjiang, who was hiding on the side of the high platform, saw and heard everything. He saw the suppressed anger in Nie Tian's eyes, and he also heard how Li Jiaoer addressed Nie Tian. "Benefactor?" Luo Jiangjiang's heart jumped. This kid looks like a teenager, but his strength is actually at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm. I heard that the one who killed Lu Yuan was also a teenager. But wasn't that teenager taken to the heavenly prison by Gu Wuyo? Could it be that this kid escaped from the heavenly prison? Impossible. Luo Jiangjiang subconsciously thought that it was impossible. After all, in a place like the heavenly prison, not to mention a teenager at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm, even a high-level true energy realm martial artist couldn't escape. The news of someone escaping from the great Chu heavenly prison hadn't spread yet, so Luo Jiangjiang didn't know about it. But this guy was very cautious and very cunning. "Young master, this lady is yours. You can take her away." And 12 smiled, indicating that Li Jiaoer could stand next to Nie Tian. "Wait." At this moment, Luo Jiangjiang's voice suddenly sounded, and he walked over with large strides. Aunt 12 was slightly taken aback and thought, "This dead man, don't tell me he's going back on his word again." Nie Tian saw a big fatty suddenly walk over, and his strength was actually at the 9th level of the giant spirit realm, so he couldn't help but be vigilant. When the people below the stage saw that the person who suddenly walked out was actually Luo Jiangjiang, they started discussing. Why did Lord Luo Jiangjiang come out? Even if it's 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals, it's not worth alarming him. Yeah, could it be that Lord Luo Jiangjiang has taken a fancy to that girl, so he doesn't want to sell her? How is that possible? Lord Luo Jiangjiang has enjoyed more women than you have seen. Why would he be reluctant to part with this girl? He must be joking. Luo Jiangjiang walked over and said with a chubby face, "Young master, I'm really sorry, but this girl is already wanted by someone. Aunt 12 doesn't know, so you can't take her away." "Already wanted?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, and then said, "But this young master has already made a deal with Aunt 12. Since it's a deal, I can't go back on my word." "Yes, Lord Luo, I have already sold this girl to young master. It's not going to go back on my word now." Aunt 12 also said. She didn't want to lose 100,000 upper-grade origin crystals. Luo Jiangjiang glared at her fiercely, and the latter's face turned cold. She immediately lowered her head and didn't dare to speak again. Luo Jiangjiang looked at Nietian and said with a smile, "Young master, my Wanchun courtyard is a place for business, and we pay attention to first come, first served. Since this girl is wanted by someone in advance, even if you and Aunt 12 have made a deal, it's useless." Although he was speaking with a smile, everyone could sense the coldness in Luo Jiangjiang's words. "Oh." A strange smile appeared on Nietian's face as he said, "May I know who wants this girl?" Luo Jiangjiang laughed and said loudly, "Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince." "Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince." As soon as these words came out, everyone felt a chill. In the Great Chu Empire, who dared to snatch people from the Crown Prince? Nietian frowned slightly at this time, and a cold expression flashed across his face. He said, "What if I insist on taking this girl away?" As soon as his voice fell, Nietian's whole body released a fierce anger. As soon as Luo Jiangjiang appeared, he already knew that it was absolutely impossible to take Li Jiao Air away with money. Moreover, Li Jiao Air showed a frightened look in front of Luo Jiangjiang, which undoubtedly meant that Luo Jiangjiang had done something to Li Jiao Air. This made Nietian even angrier, and he was determined not to tolerate it anymore. Chapter 408. Who the hell are you? Luo Jiangjiang asked the question in his heart. The killing intent on his face was no longer concealed. He had long been suspicious of Nietian. At this moment, seeing Nietian so insistent on taking Li Jiao Air away, he became even more suspicious. He already faintly believed that Nietian was the one who killed Lu Jinyuan. Although he didn't know how Nietian escaped from the heavenly prison, as long as he could capture him and hand him over to the Crown Prince, it would definitely be a great merit. "Who I am, you don't deserve to know, but I must take her away." Nietian's expression was cold, and the ruthlessness in his eyes was terrifying. Aunt 12 also noticed that something was wrong at this moment. She wanted to say something, but when she saw Nietian's eyes, she was so scared that she couldn't speak. "You want to take her away? I'm going to kill her." Luo Jiangjiang no longer probed. A big hand suddenly stretched out, and an invisible hand grabbed Li Jiao Air's neck, causing her little face to turn red. "You dare!" Almost at the same time, a sword chi whistled out and condensed into a long whip, directly strangling Aunt 12's neck and lifting her into the air. "Luo, save me." Aunt 12's tongue was hanging out as she reached out to Luo Jiangjiang for help. "Don't kill her." Luo Jiangjiang panicked. Aunt 12 was very important to him. Butterfly Pavilion's business was so good because of Aunt 12's contribution. "Let's change," Luo Jiangjiang blurted out. Loosening his grip, Li Jiao Air was finally able to breathe and coughed desperately. "Let her come over first." Nietian didn't let go and said cold, "Okay." Luo Jiangjiang looked up and saw several black figures appearing around him. He smiled coldly in his heart. "Brat, do you think you can escape?" The 10,000 spring courtyard shadow guards were all true element boundary cultivators. Dealing with a trivial third-layer giant spirit cultivator was as easy as a cat catching a mouse. Li Jiao Air walked down from the high platform and came to Nietian's side, whispering, "Thank you, benefactor." Nietian ignored her and said to Murong Xing, who was beside him, "Protect them." Murong Xing reacted and nodded heavily. Nietian could tell from Murong Xing's previous anger that the latter also hated the mess in front of him. More importantly, Murong Xing was at the 9th level of the giant spirit realm. Even her maid, Yao was a manifestation realm martial practitioner. It was obvious that Murong Xing's identity was not simple. There was definitely a great force behind him. Yao was also stunned. Clearly, she hadn't expected Nietian to be so monstrous. When the other party refused to sell, he actually wanted to rob them. Protect them? Luo Jiangjiang glanced at Murong Xing and directly regarded her as Nietian's helper. He sneered and said, "With just the two of you, die." In the next moment, Nietion roared and flung Ant 12th away. 12th Maiden! Luo Jiangjiang shouted and flew over to catch 12th Maiden. Bam! Nietion's figure also rose from the ground at this moment. He stabbed his sword at Luo Jiangjiang, who was in midair. He didn't want to kill Ant 12th at all. He just wanted to use the latter as bait to lure Luo Jiangjiang. At the same time, four figures in black appeared in midair. They were the hidden guards of the myriad spring courtyard. Ant 12th was already thrown away by Nietion, so they had no more scruples. Luo Jiangjiang sensed that something was wrong and didn't dare to save Ant 12th Maiden. Instead, he slapped at Nietion. Unfortunately, Nietion's sword aura was sharp and murderous. It directly broke through the palm shadow, and the sword aura bombarded and pierced Luo Jiangjiang's shoulder. Nietion's figure then flew over and stabbed Luo Jiangjiang's shoulder with the absolute heaven slash. The hidden guards were still a step too late. Nietion controlled Luo Jiangjiang and landed on the high platform. At this moment, Nietion's sword was stabbed in Luo Jiangjiang's shoulder, and the sword aura invaded the latter's body. As long as Nietion willed it, the surging sword aura could blast Luo Jiangjiang into minced meat. Almost no one under the platform could react to the sudden scene. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on Nietion, as if he were a monster that had just walked out of a desolate world. Everyone in the Great Chu Empire knew that the boss of the Myriad Spring Courtyard was Luo Jiangjiang on the surface, but the real controller behind the scenes was Crown Prince Wang Haorui. Causing trouble in the Myriad Spring Courtyard was a direct challenge to the authority of the Crown Prince. Nietion was either a madman or a fool to openly challenge the Crown Prince in the Great Chu Empire, because everyone knew that going against the Crown Prince would never end well. A good ending might be a corpse on the street, and the result might be the annihilation of the whole family. Brat, do you know what you're doing? Do you know who I am? Although Luo Jiangjiang was under Nietion's control, the fierceness on his face didn't change, and he even opened his mouth to threaten. Nietion smiled coldly. The tip of his sword turned, and the sword aura immediately collided in Luo Jiangjiang's body. My Yuan meridians! Luo Jiangjiang immediately howled like a pig being slaughtered. He never expected that Nietion would actually directly destroy his Yuan meridians. Nietion's shocking means were too ruthless. It was not the style of teenager at all. Let the back down. Nietion didn't want to talk nonsense with Luo Jiangjiang, and said coldly. He could naturally see that Luo Jiangjiang's identity wasn't simple. It seemed to be very high, and he could be used as a shield. If not for this, Luo Jiangjiang would have already become a pool of blood at this time. Back down. Luo Jiangjiang finally understood Nietion's fierceness at this time, and hurriedly shouted. The four black-clothed secret guards figures stopped, and they didn't dare to move. Luo Jiangjiang was the boss of the Thousand Spring Courtyard, and also the Crown Prince's sworn brother. If he died, it would be troublesome. At this time, some people in the hall felt that something was wrong, and they all stood up, wanting to leave this place. However, Nietion raised his eyebrows and bellowed in a deep voice, "Everyone, don't move." As his voice fell, two enormous sword auras, like flood dragons, blasted towards the exit of the hall. Bang! Bang! A loud bang sounded, and the hall's door was almost blasted into pieces. Most of these people were the sons of rich families, and their strength wasn't that great. After being shocked by Nietion, they all stopped and returned to their seats, not daring to move. Nietion glanced at the crowd and shouted loudly, "Everyone, didn't you come here to seek excitement? Now that the show is about to start, why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Nietion used a sound wave martial skill, and his voice exploded like thunder and had the power to break rocks. Everyone present felt their ears go numb, as if they were going to explode at any time. Today, no one is allowed to leave. Nietion smiled faintly, and everyone present was terrified, and their faces turned ashen. Murongxing and Yaoer, the master and servant, looked at Nietion and felt strange, not knowing what this guy was going to do. Nietion knew that those who came to the Transformation Butterfly Veranda were all people with some status. Since he had already caused such a ruckus in the transformation butterfly veranda, how could he let these people go so easily? At this time, the only expert present, Gooden, who was at the first layer of quintessential element, looked at Nietion with a complacent expression. Obviously, he had no fear and was waiting to watch the show. Chapter 409. Gooden was slightly stunned, but he immediately laughed and said, "Brother, I like your methods. I will definitely help you. Just say it." Nietion nodded slightly. He could tell that it was Gooden's first time coming to the butterfly loft, and he wasn't as wretched as the others. When he was bidding for Yaya just now, he wanted to save her. Therefore, Nietion guessed that Gooden wasn't a bad person and could be borrowed to help. It had to be said that Nietion had a very sharp eye for people. Gooden was a mercenary. This time, he came to the butterfly loft in the Thousand Spring Yard to broaden his horizons and see how the rich and powerful lived. He didn't expect to encounter such a thing. When he saw Yaya, Gooden's heart was filled with sympathy, but Nietion's forceful interference forced him to give up. He was a very lazy mercenary who wasn't bound by anyone and only focused on cultivation. He didn't have as much wealth as Nietion. Nietion took out a spatial ring and glanced at it. He smiled coldly and said, "Everyone, put all the good stuff you have into this ring." Everyone was shocked by Nietion's words. Two words appeared in their minds. Robbery? Who would have thought that Nietion wanted to rob them in this life and death situation? Murong Zing and Yao stared at Nietion with strange looks in their eyes. What on earth is this guy thinking? Is this the time to rob? Nietion didn't care about the others' reactions and directly threw the spatial ring to Gooden. He said, "Brother, help me collect the stuff. I'll give you half of the stuff we get later." Gooden caught the spatial ring and couldn't react for a long time. Nietion's thinking was too strange. He actually wanted to rob these rich and powerful people. However, Gooden immediately chuckled and said, "Brother, that's a good idea. I like it." Nietion nodded slightly with a strange smile on his face. Everyone here was rich and powerful. They definitely had many good things on them. After such a calamity, Nietion would definitely make a huge fortune. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that Godin helping him now was dragging the ladder down with him. If something were to happen, Gooden wouldn't be able to stay out of it. Moreover, all the people present had harmed a lot of girls. If he didn't make them pay the price, Nietion would feel really guilty. Everyone's faces were as pale as paper. How could they dare to resist? They handed over everything they had on them. Whether it was origin crystals, spirit weapons, spirit pills, or jade stones, none of them dared to keep a single item on them. This young master, what are you trying to do?" On the high platform, Luo Jiangjiang's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. The hole in his chest was bleeding nonstop, and his whole body was dyed red. To make matters worse, his elemental meridian was crippled by Nietion. If he didn't receive treatment now, he definitely wouldn't be able to last more than half an hour. Luo Jiangjiang really couldn't understand why he, a dignified 9th-level giant spirit martial artist, couldn't even block a single sword from Nietion and was even completely controlled by the latter. Nietion's strength was really too strange. Nietion raised his head and looked at the 4 black-clothed shadow guards in midair. He then stared at Luo Jiangjiang and said cold, "I only wanted to bring a girl away, but you just wouldn't let me. Now that things have come to this, you asked for it yourself." The corner of Luo Jiangjiang's mouth twitched. He subconsciously glanced at Li Jiao, and his heart was filled with regret. If he let Nietion bring the girl away just now, there wouldn't be such a scene in front of him. But how could he have imagined that Nietion could actually control the situation in the blink of an eye? "Young master, you let me go. This matter had come to an end. How about it?" Luo Jiangjiang endured the intense pain and said with a trembling voice, "Let you go." Nietion sneered and said, "Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? As long as I let you go, I'm afraid that your subordinates will tear me into pieces in the next second." "No, they won't. I guarantee that they won't dare to hurt you," Luo Jiangjiang hurriedly said. Blood flowed out of his mouth. Tian curled his lips and smiled. This fatty really thinks that I'm an inexperienced young man. Tian no longer cared about Luo Jiangjiang. Of course, he wouldn't kill the latter. He still had to rely on this card to walk out of the Wan Chun courtyard. After Gooden looted everything, Tian would leave with Murong Xing and the others. As for how to settle this girl, he could slowly think of a way. After a while, Gooden completed his task. He directly threw the spatial ring to Tian and said loudly, "Brother, I've finished helping you. Do you need any more help?" Of course. Tian took the spatial ring and kept it. He then looked at Luo Jiangjiang and smiled sinisterly. "Now, send us out." Okay. Luo Jiangjiang nodded repeatedly. In his heart, he was still thinking that as long as Tian let him go, he would definitely make the latter pay the most disastrous price. Want to leave? Just as Tian was about to leave, a cold roar suddenly sounded. Then a figure flew over. "Your Highness!" The figure landed. Everyone saw his face and exclaimed at the same time. Tian also looked at the person. It was the young man he saw in the bloody death field in the imperial prison. This person was none other than the crown prince of Great Chu, Wang Haorui. "Son of a bitch, you really escaped from the imperial prison." Wang Haorui saw Tian clearly. The surprise and shock on his face couldn't be any greater. He just heard from Wang Jintao that human demon destroyed the dungeon and escaped with Tian. Wang Haorui didn't believe it. He personally went to the imperial prison to take a look. After returning to the crown prince's residence, he suddenly felt that Li Jiao heir was a very important card. Maybe he could use her to force Tian out. So, he hurried to the Thousand Spring courtyard. Thus, he saw the scene in front of him. "You really killed Lu Jinyuan." The shock in Luo Jiangjiang's heart turned into fear on his face. His eyes almost popped out. "So what?" Tianling sneered. He looked at Wang Haorui and said, "He deserves to die." Wang Haorui had never been provoked like this before. He couldn't restrain his anger and roared, "Son of a bitch, you killed someone close to this crown prince for a lowly commoner. Now you dare to openly provoke this crown prince. You're courting death." "Lowly commoner?" Tian smiled deeply. His eyes surged with the fiercest killing intent. He said coldly, "So in your eyes, the people of Great Chu are all pigs and dogs, only worthy of being slaughtered by you. A crown prince like you is worse than a beast." Wang Haorui looked at Tian. He couldn't believe his own words. His body was trembling. His blood was trembling. Even his eyes were trembling. Without a doubt, this was the trembling of anger. Since he was young, Wang Haorui had always been looked up to by others. At this time, there was actually someone who called him worse than a beast in front of so many people. He couldn't accept this kind of thing. "You say that again?" Wang Haorui's eyes shot out extreme anger. His whole body seemed like it was about to explode. Chapter 410. Tian originally thought that Lan Binjifeng and Wu Ke Gongsheng and these princes were already shameless enough. Unexpectedly, compared to Wang Haorui in front of him, they were simply model princes. Wang Haorui allowed his men to do evil and even ran a place like Wan Chun courtyard. These teenage girls, which one of them did not have a father or mother, could it be because of their lowly background they were to be trampled on and humiliated? Could it be because Wang Haorui was the crown prince? He could manipulate other people's fate and self-esteem? This time, Wang Haorui met Tian. He will taste the feeling of being trampled under someone's foot. When Tian's words fell, the whole place was dead silent, like the temporary calm before the storm. Those girls who were being auctioned looked at Tian dumbfoundedly. They never thought that one day there would be a strange and powerful person who would care so much about their life and death. "Brother." "Well said." Gooden stared at Tian for a long time, suddenly laughed, and shouted, "What bullshit crown prince? He is worse than a F** king beast. If I were the emperor, I would definitely hang this bullshit crown prince up and beat him every day." Tian looked at Gooden, so this guy was also a madman. "Ah!" Suddenly, Wang Haorui roared crazily, suddenly pointed at Tian and shouted crazily, "Kill him! Kill him for me!" The four black-clothed secret guards in the air at first were stunned, then immediately reacted and became eager. "Your Royal Highness, save me, save me." Luo Jiangjiang saw Wang Haorui directly went crazy, immediately scared out his wits. His face turned green. "Humph." Yet Tian smiled coldly and said, "Sorry, your Royal Highness is angry. He will not care about you anymore. You are useless." With that, Nie Tian pulled out his long sword, then his body shook, releasing several sharp sword chi, actually broke all the meridians in Luo Jiangjiang's limbs. This time, Luo Jiangjiang would not die a quick death. He would only die slowly in unimaginable pain. Nie Tian looked at him and said coldly, "Sometimes I like bad people because no matter what I do to them, I will not feel guilty. On the contrary, it is very satisfying." Wang Haorui was already crazy, certainly did not care about Luo Jiangjiang's life, so this card, for Nie Tian, had no meaning. "Kill him, kill him, kill him for me." Luo Jiangjiang was already dead, so Wang Haorui did not have the slightest hesitation. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, 4 black-garbed guards swooped down from the sky and launched attacks at Nie Tian simultaneously. "Be careful." When Murongxing saw this scene, his heart jumped to his throat. The true Chi's Ling, Ling Ling Yen Tian, Tian's Ling, Zhenwu and Tian, Ling's Yan said. Nie Tian jerked his head up. As soon as the star soul steel inside of him sensed it, a star's soul flew out. Boom! Nie Tian struck out with his palm. Soon after, a powerful palm print soared into the sky. Its enormous momentum was like a huge wave in the sea. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds rang out. The attacks of the 4 black-clothed secret guards were actually blocked by the palm print. F***CK. This scene caused Gooden to suck in a breath of cold air. He'd never imagined that the youth before him, who was only at the 3rd level of the Giant Soul realm, would be able to unleash such power in an instant. Gooden reckoned that he could also resist the joint attack of 4 first-level true energy boundary martial artists, but he would definitely not be able to come out unscathed like Nie Tian. Nie Tian's strength could only be described with one word: strange and unpredictable. "I'll hold him off. You guys take him away." Nie Tian relied on a 3rd-ranked astral soul to forcefully withstand the combined attack of 4 shadow guards. The blood in his body churned wildly as he stared at Godan and shouted, "All right." Gooden agreed. Stimulated by Nie Tian, he instantly felt the blood in his body boil, and his fighting spirit soared. "Want to leave? Not so easy." Wang Haorui sneered. Immediately after, a dozen black-clothed men appeared behind him, and all of them were at the 9th level of the Giant Soul realm. F***CK. Gooden cursed and wanted to rush out. However, it was clearly impossible to bring more than 30 ordinary teenage girls with them. Gooden's skin was thick, so he could take a beating. These girls, on the other hand, could not even withstand the dissipating chi. A little bit of yuan chi could kill them on the spot. "Everyone, gather together. Stick close to me." At this time, Murongxing suddenly shouted, and a scroll appeared in his hand. Seeing that scroll, Nie Tian was slightly stunned, and his heart was not small. Space-time transfer scroll. That's right, the scroll in Murongxing's hand was a space-time transfer scroll. Space-time transfer scroll was a very magical item that could allow people to transfer between time and space in an instant. In essence, it was actually a space-time spiritual array that could only be refined by a rank 4 spiritual array master. More importantly, only space-time spiritual array masters could refine space-time transfer scrolls. Space-time attribute. This was another magical primordial spirit attribute that was different from the 9 elemental attributes. It was a primordial spirit attribute that was even rarer than the light and darkness attributes. Hence, space-time spiritual array masters were extremely rare. Even if it was Nie Tian who had lived 2 lifetimes, the number of space-time spiritual array masters that he had seen could not be counted on one hand. It was precisely because space-time spiritual array masters were rare that a rank 1 space-time transfer scroll was comparable to a rank 6 spirit pill or rank 6 spirit artifact. Nietian never would have thought that Murong Xing actually had a space-time transfer scroll in her hands. This lass's background is not simple. Nietian glanced at Murong Xing and said in his heart. But the space-time transfer scroll in Murong Xing's hands was clearly just a rank 1 scroll. The teleportation distance was shorter, but the teleportation array's range was smaller, so those girls had to get close to her. Gooden, protect Miss Murong well. Don't let anyone get close to her. Nietian roared, reminding Gooden. A rank 1 space-time transfer scroll's teleportation time needed at least 10 seconds. Within these 10 seconds, it must not be interrupted. Miss Murong. Murong Xing slightly frowned, immediately blushed, and said in her heart, "This guy already knew that I'm a girl." Murong Xing knew that this was not the time to think about this. Her divine sense entered the teleportation scroll. In the next moment, an invisible array appeared, enveloping Murong Xing and the group of girls. "Stop them! Don't let them go!" Wang Haorui immediately sensed something. He roared and was the first to rush over, wanting to stop Murong Xing. Gooden laughed and roared. "Bullshit Crown Prince, you came at the right time. Let Grandpa send you to heaven." Vajra critical strike. Finished speaking, Gooden roared and punched out. A fist shadow appeared in the air, surging with terrifying true origin chi. Chapter 411. Save me. Wang Haorui obviously didn't expect Gooden's strength to be so tyrannical. The terrifying aura in front of him made him tremble with fear. "Your Highness!" The 4 dark guards in the air shouted at the same time and attacked at the same time. Swish! 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 4 palm shadows flew out at the same time and collided with the fist shadow in the air. Bang! With a loud bang, a visible shockwave instantly exploded. The True Element Realm martial artist's True Element Chi surged in all directions like wind blades. Wang Haorui screamed in pain and was sent flying by the shockwave. Not good. Nietian was alarmed when he sensed that the airwave was rushing towards the space-time teleportation portal. With a loud shout, a layer of green light immediately lit up inside of his body and gushed out, enveloping the space-time teleportation portal like a shield. Bang! With a muffled sound, the space-time transfer array shook, but it wasn't destroyed. Fortunately, Nietian used the Extreme Wood Jade Sky battle armor to block the shockwave. Otherwise, the Grade 1 spiritual array wouldn't be able to withstand the attack of True Element Chi. At this time, the transfer array suddenly lit up with a layer of dazzling white light. Everyone was blinded by this white light and had to close their eyes. When they opened their eyes again, Murong Xing and the others had already disappeared. Fortunately, although Nietian didn't take the transfer array, he didn't have any burdens around him. With his strength, it was more than enough to kill his way out. "Brother, let's go." Gooden saw that the people behind him had safely left and shouted to Nietian with a smile. Nietian nodded slightly and was ready to leave. Bastard. At this time, Wang Haorui crawled up from the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. He shouted angrily, "You want to leave after saving people? Kill them all." Fortunately, the 4 dark guards acted in time, and Wang Haorui's life was saved. "You think you can stop me with these shrimp soldiers?" Nietian glanced at the surrounding black-clothed people and didn't put them in his eyes. At this time, Wang Haorui had a total of 4 True Element Realm Dark Guards and a dozen Giant Spirit Realm Black-Clothed Guards. This kind of strength was very intimidating. It would be very difficult for Nietian to defeat these people, but if he insisted on escaping, the other party would not be able to stop him. Nietian and Eggface leaped up at the same time, rushing towards the entrance of the hall. One sword to illuminate the night. Nietian's long sword opened the way and slashed out. In the air, a huge sword shadow that was hundreds of meters long came crashing down. Boom! The entire hall shook violently, on the verge of collapse. The people in the hall were instantly killed and injured. Ghostly wails and wolf howls resounded. What a powerful sword chi! Gooden sensed the terrifying aura within the sword chi and couldn't help but look at Nietian with deep admiration. He was not surprised by Nie Tian's strength, but by the latter's talent. He was only in his teens, but he was already at the third level of the giant spirit realm. The power of his sword was something that even a ninth-level giant spirit realm martial artist would not dare to approach. Such talent could be said to be incomparably rare. Gooden considered himself a genius, reaching the first level of the true essence realm at the age of 30. But when he compared himself with Nie Tian, he suddenly felt that he had lived his age in vain. The dozen or so ninth-level giant spirit realm black robe guards were shocked by the power of Nie Tian's sword. All of them subconsciously retreated, not daring to step forward. Trash! Wang Haorue scolded angrily. If he wasn't injured, he would definitely rush up to stop them. The four hidden guards were also wary of the power of Nie Tian's great black murderous seal just now, so they were a little cautious. We can't stop them. All of you will die. Wang Haorue roared continuously, completely crazed. The muscles on his face were twisted due to anger, looking very sinister. The dozen or so guards instantly trembled and had no choice but to step forward. Everyone in Chuyang City knew about Wang Haorue's ruthlessness. What he said now was definitely not a joke. If Nie Tian and Gooden escaped, none of these guards would be able to survive. Kill! One of the guards hardened his heart, and a long saber appeared on his back. It was the giant spirit true body. The huge saber blade almost tore a hole in the ceiling of the hall. Courting death, Nie Tianling sneered, and the sword Absolute Heaven Slash was used again. Vast sword chi spread out 100 meters, and the whistling momentum was extremely sharp, as though the surrounding air was pulled tight. Bang! With a dull sound, the sword chi exploded, and the guard's saber primordial spirit was directly blown away, and his entire body was sent flying. When the other guards saw this scene, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Their hearts were filled with horror, and even their bodies began to tremble. Impossible! Wang Haorue shouted angrily. You only have the strength of the third-level giant spirit realm. How can you have such terrifying strength? Previously at the Blood Death Ground, when Nie Tian easily killed the demonic Blood Ape King, Wang Haorue was already shocked by the former's horrifying strength. Now that he saw it up close, the aura that rushed towards him made him even more terrified. Humph! Nie Tianling laughed and said, An idiot like you doesn't deserve to know. You! Wang Haorue's eyes were bloodshot, and he couldn't wait to tear Nie Tian into pieces. Nie Tian and Gooden rushed over, and they were about to rush out of the hall. At this moment, the four shadow guards moved. They knew that if they couldn't stop Nie Tian and Gooden, Wang Haorue might really kill them. Boom! One of the shadow guards punched out, and his fist was wrapped in true energy chi, breaking through the air. Nie Tian slightly furrowed his brows. It was not easy for him to resist the attack of a true energy realm martial artist. Just now, he was able to resist the combined attack of 4 people at the same time, and it was all because of the power of a third-rank star soul. At this moment, Nie Tian was hesitating whether to use his third-rank star soul or not. There were 2 third-rank star souls on the star soul tablet, and they could be considered as Nie Tian's life-saving trump card. If he used them on the shadow guard, it would be a waste. Scram! Just as Nie Tian was hesitating, Gooden punched out, and a terrifying aura rolled out. It was actually much more tyrannical than the shadow guards. Pum! The 2 fists collided, and the shadow guard was sent flying with a miserable howl. On the other hand, Gooden had a face full of laughter and was not injured in the slightest. Nie Tian glanced at Gooden and said in his heart, This guy's name is really old-fashioned, but his strength is really not for show. The power of this punch, even a second-level true energy realm martial artist might not be able to withstand it. When the other 3 shadow guards saw this, their hearts were overwhelmed with shock, and they subconsciously retreated. When Nie Tian saw the fear on the faces of the 3, he immediately laughed coldly, and his gaze locked onto Wang Haorue, and he suddenly stabbed out with his sword. Chua! A sword light flew out like lightning, and a cold, killing intent pressed towards Wang Haorue. Pooh! Wang Haorue didn't even have the slightest reaction, and the sword light actually cut off half of his face. Ah, my face! Blood spurted out, and Wang Haorui screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Nie Tian didn't kill him, but chose an even crueler way to attack him. Chua! Without waiting for Wang Haorui to finish screaming, another sword light flashed, and the other side of his face was also cut off. Chapter 412. Son of a bitch, I'll kill you. Wang Haorui's face was dripping with blood, and the pain that seeped into his bones caused him to go completely insane. He actually charged straight at Nie Tian, courting death. Nie Tian's entire body was brimming with killing intent. He had not killed Wang Haorui just now because he did not want the matter to become too big. Nie Tian's plan was to kill Wang Haorui after seeing the Great Shu Emperor. But if the latter wholeheartedly wanted to die, he absolutely would not be polite. Just as Wang Haorui was charging over without a care for anything, Nie Tian suddenly felt a terrifying aura appear behind him. His expression instantly changed. Nie Tian suddenly turned around. A purple-clothed figure had appeared not even 10 meters behind him. Nie Tian's mental strength had already reached rank 46, and he could grasp even the slightest movement within 1,000 meters. Ordinary martial artists would be able to immediately sense him if they were within 100 meters of him. But this purple-clothed figure was able to silently approach within 10 meters of Nie Tian. It was truly strange. What terrifying killing intent! Nie Tian looked at the purple-clothed person and instantly felt the latter's terrifying killing intent almost solidify and envelop him. The purple-clothed person was very skilled in controlling killing intent. When he had approached Nie Tian just now, he had not revealed any killing intent at all. Now that he had locked onto Nie Tian, the boundless killing intent was almost suffocating. Assassin. Nie Tian immediately deduced the purple-clothed person's identity. Assassin. Only an assassin could control his killing intent to such a degree. And without a doubt, this person was a top assassin. His killing ability was definitely not inferior to the old assassin of the Dragon Blood Martial Group. Only, why would a place like Myriad Spring Courtyard have an assassin? Senior apprentice brother, kill him for me. Although the purple-clothed person's face was covered by the purple robe, Wang Haorui recognized him at a glance and even called him senior apprentice brother. Senior apprentice brother? Nie Tian was even more puzzled. No matter what, Wang Haorui was the crown prince of the Great Shu Empire. Why would he be the same master as an assassin? Brother, this kid is a bit strange. Gooden had also sensed the purple-clothed person's terror and warned Nie Tian in a low voice. Nie Tian of a slight nod, all his attention focused on the purple-clothed person, not daring to act rashly. At this moment, the purple-clothed man was like a sharp arrow waiting to be shot. The moment the bowstring moved, it would be the moment to claim his life. At this time, the purple-clothed person had arrived. Everyone was stunned at the purple-clothed person's arrival. At this moment, everyone was stunned by the arrival of the purple-clothed man. A strange and austere atmosphere spread in the air. Swish! In the next moment, a streak of terrifying sword chi shot out towards Nie Tian like a sharp arrow. Nie Tian didn't even have time to react. The origin star stone within him trembled slightly, causing him to move slightly. Pooh! Even so, Nie Tian was still unable to completely avoid the sword chi. His arm was affected by the sword chi, and a horrifying wound appeared. Fresh blood gushed out and dyed his entire arm red. What a fast sword chi! Nie Tian's face sank. The shock in his heart was written all over his face. Two words appeared in his mind. Sword force. That's right. This was the sword momentum. It was a level higher than sword intent. Just now, before the purple-clothed man's sword chi shot out, it had already formed a sword force that enveloped Nie Tian. It was precisely by relying on the momentum of the sword that his sword chi had reached such a shocking speed that even Nie Tian had no time to defend himself. If it weren't for the fact that Nie Tian had the primal star stone in his body and had a strong sense of danger, he would have been pierced through by the purple-robed man's sword chi and become a corpse. Nie Tian had never imagined that he would actually encounter a swordsman with sword momentum. The so-called sword momentum was a space of sword intent that was derived from sword intent. It was similar to the spirit wheel space of a spirit wheel realm warrior, but not as overbearing as the spirit wheel space. In the sword momentum, the swordsman's sword chi and sword intent would be enhanced by several folds. Even the speed and power would be doubled. That was why the purple-clothed man's attack was so terrifying and caught him off guard. The purple-clothed man's sword chi landed and injured Nietion's arm. However, what appeared in his eyes was not joy, but astonishment. Obviously, he did not expect Nietion to be able to dodge the fatal blow. You are not bad to be able to dodge my killer move. No wonder Lone Wolf would die in your hands. The purple-clothed man said faintly. His voice was as soft as silk, as though he was sobbing from hell, giving off an indescribable feeling of oppression. You are indeed an assassin. When Nietion heard the purple-clothed man mention the Lone Wolf assassin, he immediately understood that the person in front of him was an assassin from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Nietion had only been in the Great Chu Empire for a day. He originally thought that no matter how powerful the people from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion were, they would need at least 10 days to half a month to find him. He did not expect that the assassin would appear in less than a day. Obviously, the purple-clothed assassin in front of him knew of Nietion's identity, and he was the one who replaced Lone Wolf and continued to pursue and kill Nietion. Nietion still remembered that Gu Yi said that the assassins from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion were divided into 7 levels. From low to high, they were black iron, bronze, silver, gold, purple gold, diamond, and black emperor. The Lone Wolf assassin from before was a bronze assassin. Thinking about it, the purple-clothed man in front of him should be a silver assassin. The purple-clothed man's strength was much higher than Lone Wolf. The latter was only a swordsman with sword intent, while the purple-clothed man was a swordsman with sword momentum. Sword intent and sword momentum. The difference of one realm was like heaven and earth. If not for the raw starstone just now, Nietion would already be a corpse. The purple-clothed man did not have any reaction. He suddenly raised his hand and a token flew out. Nietion immediately caught it. It was the death god token made of silver. He guessed correctly. The person in front of him was a silver rank assassin from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Nietion was very curious. How could a silver rank assassin from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion be the Great Chu Crown Prince's senior brother? It was really strange. Nietion. At this time, the purple-clothed man shouted out Nietion's name. His gloomy voice sounded again. The death god token is already in your hands. You're the person that the death god has set his eyes on. Take my neck sword, and you will be safe for the time being. Nietion. Hearing this name, everyone was taken aback. Gooden exclaimed, So you are the Lord of Heaven, Luo City. Lord of Heaven, Luo City, Nietion. Wang Haowei was also surprised. Lord of Heaven, Luo City, Nietion. This name had spread throughout the entire 3,000 small worlds because of the Dragon Blood Martial Meet. Even those who did not participate in the Dragon Blood Martial Meet knew this name. Nietion did not care about the others' reactions. Looking at the purple-clothed man, he said, If I take your next sword, you will let me leave? Yes. The purple-clothed man nodded slightly, then laughed softly. It's a pity that no one has been able to take this sword of mine until now. You are no exception. Is that so? Nietion smiled faintly and said, I only want to say, in this world, there is no sword that I, Nietion, cannot take. Chapter 413. The purple-robed man's expression was cold like a piece of ice that wouldn't melt for 1,000 years. There was not a single ripple in his eyes. His entire body was releasing a faint sword aura that was gentle and light without a trace. However, that faint, dangerous aura could not be concealed. He was like a ferocious tiger in hiding. The slightest movement would put him in danger of death. Since he dared to set a sword move with Nietion, it was enough to show that he had full confidence in his own sword move. Nietion stared at the purple-robed man with an expressionless face and a calm heart. He was very clear that the person standing in front of him was not a human, but a killing weapon. The silver rank assassin of the Lin Xian Heaven Pavilion. Just his control over his killing intent was terrifying. In the hall, everyone retreated a few hundred meters away from Tian and the purple-robed man. At a certain moment, Wang Haorui's cold eyes released a hint of joy. He said in his heart, Tian, even if you are the Heaven Luo City Lord, there's only one ending for you to meet my senior brother. Death. Wang Haorui was very clear about his senior brother's strength. Not to mention a mere third-level giant spirit warrior. Even a third-level true essence warrior would not be able to take a sword from the ladder. At this moment, Tian and the purple-robed man stood opposite each other with a distance of about 20 meters. Tian's face was calm, and his breathing was steady without a hint of fear. Heaven Luo City Lord, you are indeed powerful. Under my killing intent, you can actually be so calm. You are the most determined person I have ever seen. The purple-robed man's whimpering voice sounded. It was soft and continuous, giving people a very terrifying illusion, as if they had fallen into a deep pool and were unable to extricate themselves. Tian did not speak. He was waiting for the purple-robed man to make a move. He could feel that the purple-robed man was very powerful from that sword move just now. He was definitely stronger than Long Sky, who had the dragon saber arm. Perhaps the purple-robed man's strength was only at first-level true essence realm or ninth-level giant spirit realm, but his sword Dao had reached the sword power realm. This undoubtedly meant that he was an assassin who specialized in sword Dao, a swordsman in the sword form realm. Even if he was only in the giant spirit realm, was definitely more terrifying than most true energy realm martial artists. In his previous life, Tian was a peerless swordsman in the profound meaning of swords. He was also one of the 5 great sword Daos in the heaven realm. He knew every realm of the sword Dao like the back of his hand. At this moment, the purple-clothed man did not move at all. However, Tian could see that an invisible sword vortex had appeared around the purple-robed man. In the next moment, this sword vortex expanded and would erupt with the most terrifying attack. The 10 yuan meridians in Tian's body revolved crazily. The domain origin array seemed to have sensed danger and began to revolve crazily. Streams of star energy surged within his Dantian's yuan meridians. An astral soul appeared on the astral soul steel. As long as Tian willed it, it would instantly erupt forth. Everyone stared blankly at the 2 people in the hall, their faces covered in beads of sweat. The atmosphere in the air was oppressive to the extreme. Tian prepared to receive the Grim Reaper's greeting. Suddenly, the purple-clothed man's voice sounded out again. It was faint and seemed to be able to disturb people's minds, making them feel endless despair. As the voice fell, the sword vortex on the purple-clothed man's body expanded, enveloping the space of hundreds of meters. It filled the entire hall and instantly enveloped Tian. Space of sword force. When Tian sensed that his body was enveloped by tyrannical sword energy, his expression immediately changed. He felt a tightness in his chest, as if there was an invisible force squeezing him to death. Tian immediately understood that this was the space of a swordsman's space of sword force, also known as sword warp. Sword warp was a terrifying space created by a swordsman using sword energy. In this space, the swordsman's sword energy would be unleashed to the extreme. Tian did not expect that the purple-clothed man in front of him could actually release sword warp. At this moment, he could feel that his yuan meridians were being suppressed. Even the power of the stars, which was known as the origin of strength, showed signs of stagnation. Tian, do you feel the aura of death from the Grim Reaper's greeting? The purple-clothed man had a slight smile on his face, revealing strong self-confidence and endless contempt. Tian's face was calm and indifferent. The corner of his mouth even curled up slightly. He said, "You want to kill me with a mere sword warp?" "Oh." The purple-clothed man laughed mockingly and said, "Everyone says that the Tian Luo City Lord is arrogant. Now that I have seen it, he indeed did not disappoint me. My sword warp can only be broken by the true origin chi of a high-level true origin realm warrior or the spirit wheel space of a spirit wheel realm warrior. I would like to see how the Nyet Tian City Lord, who is in the giant spirit realm, can break my sword warp. As the coldest voice fell, it was followed by the coldest killing intent in the next moment. 7 dazzling, pure, white sword shadows suddenly appeared behind the purple-clothed man. Each of them was like an arrow on a bow, ready to be released at any moment. Nyetian could feel that the power contained in each of the dazzling sword shadows behind the purple-clothed man was definitely not weaker than the attack of a true Origin Realm warrior. Coupled with the sword warp, the power that the sword shadows could unleash was even more terrifying. At this moment, Nyetian was in the purple-clothed man's sword warp. His strength and speed were both suppressed. It was impossible for him to dodge the attack with his body technique. So strong. Gooden also realized how terrifying the purple-clothed man was. Each of the 7 dazzling sword shadows could easily kill a true Origin Realm warrior. In front of my senior brother's broken Kuei, 7 murders. Everyone is a piece of paper, Wang Haorui said sinisterly. His eyes were filled with the most resolute killing intent. He had personally seen the purple-clothed man use the broken Kuei, 7 murders, to easily kill a true Origin Realm warrior. Nyetian was only in the giant spirit realm. Even if he had heaven-defying strength, he would definitely not be able to withstand the broken Kuei, 7 murders. Dying. Like the judgment of the Grim Reaper, the purple-clothed man's body trembled. The 7 sword shadows pierced through the air like lightning, carrying the most piercing, killing intent. In the blink of an eye, they arrived. The dazzling white light became the most dangerous and fatal thing at this moment, attacking towards Nyetian. Blood catapult heaven net. Facing the purple-clothed man's ultimate move, Nyetian's face slightly sank. With a low roar, the star energy in his body surged out and condensed into a large blood-colored net outside his body. Blood catapult heaven net. This was another 3rd-grade star soul in Nyetian's body. The power of a 3rd-grade star soul was enough for Nyetian to instantly injure a true Origin Realm warrior. However, facing the purple-clothed man's sword warp and broken Kuei, 7 murders, it was still unknown whether he could block it. Swish, swish, swish. In the next moment, the 7 sword shadows pierced through the air and struck the blood catapult heaven net. Buzz. The blood catapult heaven net was like a protective barrier that was extremely tough. Under the impact of the 7 sword shadows, it let out a low cry. 7 deep dents appeared on the blood catapult heaven net, but it did not break. It was still trying its best to resist. Oomph. The purple-clothed man laughed cold. In the next moment, he shouted, "Break for me!" Chapter 414. Nyetian had already expected that the blood sieve heaven net would be broken, so he wasn't flustered. His body trembled slightly, and surging elemental energy gushed out. A layer of green light appeared, and the extreme wood jade sky battle armor was activated. At the same time, a sword shield appeared in front of him. Bang, bang, bang. The 7 sword shadows bombarded the sword shield, and the sword shield immediately shattered. In the next instant, the sword shadows bombarded Nyetian's body. Bang! Nyetian was sent flying. Brother! Gooden screamed when he saw this scene. Nyetian landed heavily on the ground, and his body dragged out a trail of blood that was more than 10 meters long before he finally stopped. But immediately after, he stood up. There were 7 wounds on his body, and his whole body was dripping with blood. It was a terrifying sight. Nyetian's injuries looked severe, but they weren't fatal. However, the purple-robed man's sword warp and broken Kuei 7 kills were indeed terrifying. Nyetian had used the 3rd-grade blood sieve heaven net, the sword shield of the AO Sword Arts Sword 17, and the defense of the extreme wood jade sky battle armor. Even with 3 layers of defense, he was still injured. It showed how powerful the purple-robed man was. Nyetian knew in his heart that if it wasn't for the 3rd-grade blood sieve heaven net, he would have been a corpse by now. Not dead, When the purple-robed man saw Nye Tian stand up, the joy on his face was instantly replaced by astonishment. His slightly dilated pupils interpreted 3 words. Impossible. He had never imagined that Nye Tian could actually block his broken Kuei 7 kills. This was simply impossible. The purple-robed man cultivated the 7 kills sword art, and the broken Kuei 7 kills was regarded as a sure kill move. Coupled with the might of the sword warp and weft, even a 5th-level true essence martial artist would be instantly killed. How could Nye Tian, a mere 3rd-level giant spirit realm warrior, withstand his sure kill sword? Everything was too strange and unimaginable. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, the purple-robed man would never have believed that someone could be so strong. At this moment, not only was the purple-clothed man horrified, the others were even more terrified. Gooden thought to himself, if he had been the one to receive the broken Kuei 7 murders just now, it would most likely have been a tragedy. It was unimaginable that a 3rd-level giant martial artist could instantly erupt with such terrifying strength. Pooh! Nye Tian spat out a mouthful of extravasated blood, and his expression eased up a lot. He looked at the purple-clothed man and said in a cold voice, "Is this your sword of warp and weft? That's all there is to it." The purple-clothed man looked at Nye Tian coldly. The anger in his heart was indescribable. Nye Tian's body trembled as he shook off the bloodstains on his body. Then he swallowed several spirit pills, and his complexion gradually returned to normal. The purple-clothed man's face was gloomy, almost dripping blood. He seemed to be thinking about something, and his eyes flickered. "You guys can leave." A few seconds later, the purple-clothed man suddenly spoke, unable to hide the disappointment in his tone. He had already said that if Nye Tian could block this move of his, he would be safe for the time being. Now that Nye Tian had really received his sword move, he naturally had to keep his promise. Nye Tian was slightly stunned. He laughed and said, "We will meet again, right?" The purple-clothed man's killing move was received by Nye Tian, so it was imaginable how furious he was. However, he still let Nye Tian go at this moment. This calmness and principle made Nye Tian extremely shocked. If it was someone else, they would definitely not let Nye Tian go after seeing him injured. At the very least, someone like Wang Haorui would definitely not let go. The purple-clothed man raised his head and actually lifted his purple robe, revealing a calm and resolute face. He said coldly, "The death order has already been issued, and there is absolutely no possibility of retracting it. The next time we meet, it will be either you or me." Once the death order of the Lin Xian Heaven Pavilion was issued, it would never be retracted until the person who received it died. "All right," Nye Tian smiled indifferently. "We will meet again." Although the purple-clothed man was not a good person, he was definitely an assassin with principles. At the very least, he would keep his promise. "Brother Gooden, let's go." Nye Tian turned around and left. Gooden was still in a daze and did not know how to react. He never thought that an assassin would actually keep his promise. "Senior brother, you can't let him go. He has already been injured by you. If you make a move now, you will definitely be able to kill him." Wang Haorui instantly shouted when he saw that Nye Tian was about to leave. Even his bloodied face was trembling. Now that Nye Tian was injured, it was a good opportunity to kill them. How could he let them go? If he doesn't make a move, can you stop us? Nye Tianling looked at Wang Haorui coldly, causing the latter to tremble in fear. However, Wang Haorui quickly calmed himself down and shouted to the guards beside him, "All of you, kill them for me." The 3 hidden guards and a dozen guards looked at each other, eager to give it a try. "Let them go." At this moment, the purple-clothed man spoke coldly. The coldness in his eyes seemed to be able to freeze everything. When he swept his gaze across them, the group of guards were all frightened out of their wits. "Senior brother," Wang Haorui shouted angrily. "Shut up. If you dare to make another sound, I will kill you." The purple-clothed man's cold eyes locked onto Wang Haorui and said in a cold voice, "I, Wen Hao, keep my word." Nye Tian smiled faintly and said in a loud voice, "Well said. Assassin Wen Hao, we'll meet again." After saying that, Nyetian suddenly thought of something. He slightly frowned and said, "The 7-kill sword incantation that you practice not only kills people, but also yourself. If I'm not mistaken, you must be suffering from using the sword warp. The 7-killing intent of the 7-kill sword incantation will definitely shake your origin meridians and injure you. Let me give you a piece of advice. If you want to live longer, give up on the 7-kill sword incantation right now." After saying that, Nyetian left with Gooden without waiting for Wenhao's response. Nyetian. Wenhao looked in the direction in which Nyetian and Gooden left. After a while, he spat out a mouthful of blood and coldly curled up the corner of his mouth. "I'm looking forward to fighting you next time." Nyetian was right. Wenhao's 7-kill sword incantation could kill people, but also himself. The reason why Wenhao could reach the stage of sword force was because he practiced the 7-kill sword incantation. Compared to other sword incantations, the biggest advantage of the 7-kill sword incantation was that it could help the swordsman condense sword chi faster and nurture the heart of the sword. Furthermore, the 7-kill sword incantation was extremely fierce and terrifying, which matched the temperament of an assassin very well. However, everything had its advantages and disadvantages. When the 7-kill sword incantation condensed sword chi, it would also produce the 7-killing intent. The 7-killing intent would wander in the meridians and cause great damage to a martial artist's origin meridians. Especially when a martial artist used a large-scale sword move, it would cause the 7-killing intent to become even more violent, which would result in a greater backlash. Just now, Wenhao had created the sword warp and stimulated the brutality of the 7-killing intent, which was why he suddenly spat out blood. However, Wenhao didn't care about this at all. For an assassin, living longer wasn't that important. Being able to kill people was the most important thing. Seeing Wenhao suddenly vomiting blood, Wang Haorui couldn't help but step forward and ask, "Senior brother, are you all right?" Chapter 415. After Nyetian and Gooden left the Thousand Spring courtyard, they didn't dare to stop. They ran for dozens of kilometers and only stopped after confirming that no one was following them. Both of them were panting heavily. "Brother, are you really the Heaven Luo City Lord?" Gooden composed himself and looked at Nyetian suspiciously. The Heaven Luo City Lord Nyetian was too famous recently, even surpassing the 3 monstrous geniuses of Meru Spirit City. Gooden originally thought that the Heaven Luo City Lord would be at least 25 or 26 years old. He didn't expect that he would be a 16 or 17-year-old youth. What was even more unexpected was that he went to the Thousand Spring courtyard on a whim and met the Heaven Luo City Lord. Everything that happened today was like a dream. "What? Don't I look like it?" Nyetian smiled faintly and took out a small bottle as he spoke. He tapped it lightly with his finger and drew out a drop of dragon blood. He opened his mouth and drank it. This time, Nyetian also brought a dozen drops of dragon blood. Not only was it helpful for his cultivation, but it could also heal his injuries instantly. The blood of an ancient golden dragon was more effective than any elixir. Gooden smelled the dense dragon chi in the air. That kind of refreshing feeling caused him to go into a daze. After a while, Gooden came to his senses and said, "Brother, is this the legendary dragon blood?" Nyetian smiled faintly and drew out another drop of dragon blood. He placed it in front of Gooden and said, "Brother Gooden, you'll know if it's dragon blood after you try it." Gulp, gulp. Gooden swallowed his saliva and couldn't react for a long time. Nyetian actually gave him a drop of dragon blood for him to taste. This guy was too generous. This was dragon blood, not plain water. "Don't you want it?" Nyetian asked jokingly when he saw Gooden's dazed expression. Yes, of course I want it." Gooden quickly reacted and swallowed it in one gulp. So good. As the dragon blood entered his body, Gooden felt a powerful force surge in his body. It actually had the effect of flushing his yuan meridians and strengthening his bones. He couldn't help but cry out. Nyetian saw that this guy was so engrossed and sneered. He drew out another drop of dragon blood and said, "If it's good, give me another drop." Gooden was completely dumbfounded. His head swelled, and he almost floated in the air. After 5 or 6 seconds, Gooden finally reacted and swallowed it in one gulp. Damn it, this is dragon blood. The value of dragon blood was definitely higher than a 6th-grade elixir. Nietion didn't even blink his eyes as he took every drop. Thinking back to Nietion's act of buying girls from the butterfly transformation veranda, Gooden suddenly felt that it was child's play. Now that he was giving out drops of dragon blood, he was truly generous. After swallowing the 2 drops of dragon blood, Gooden felt that it was a piece of cake for Nietion to buy girls at the butterfly pavilion. Brother Gooden, do you believe that I'm the Lord of Heaven Luo City now? Nietion put away the dragon blood and smiled. Hum. Gooden nodded and said, Brother, you're definitely the Lord of Heaven Luo City. If anyone dares to doubt you, I, Gooden, will be the first to smash his head. At this moment, Gooden completely believed in Nietion's identity. Other than the Lord of Heaven Luo City, who else could do this? Gooden heard that Nietion obtained more than half of the dragon bloodstones in Heaven Luo Mountain, so it wasn't strange that he had more dragon blood. At this moment, Gooden looked at Nietion and chuckled. He thought to himself, is he the type of person who is foolish but has a lot of money? Nietion, however, didn't pay any attention to Gooden's strange gaze. He took out his spatial ring and emptied its contents. Now was the time to split the spoils. These things were robbed from the butterfly pavilion. Nietion had promised Gooden that he would split half of the things with him, so he couldn't go back on his word. Gooden saw so many good things suddenly appear in front of him. Essence crystals, spirit pills, spirit weapons, martial arts scrolls, martial technique scrolls, etc. They piled up into a small mountain. He was dumbfounded. He didn't expect those rich young masters to have so many good things on them. Boss Nietion, so many things, and you're giving me half? Gooden looked at Nietion as though he was dreaming, as though he still didn't believe it. At this moment, he didn't dare to call Nietion brother. He called Nietion boss instead. I said it was too much. Of course, I'll give you half. Nietion smiled faintly and didn't waste any words. He directly swung down a stream of sword chi, splitting the treasures that were like a small mountain into 2 piles. He said, Brother Gooden, you choose first. The remaining half is mine. Gooden swallowed and said, There's so many things. I can't take them all. Nietion was speechless. Don't you have a space ring? Gooden shook his head. I have one. Nietion shook his head and took out another space ring. He thought to himself, this guy is a true energy realm warrior, but he's so poor that it's ridiculous. It's like he came from a slum. Nietion gave the space ring to Gooden, but the latter didn't know how to use it. Nietion had to teach him how to use it. After a while, the two finished splitting the spoils. Boss Nietion, it's almost dawn. Where are you going? Do you need my help? Gooden knew the benefits of helping Nietion, so he took the initiative to ask. I'm going to find someone. Nietion said lightly. Okay, I'll go with you. Gooden smiled. Nietion was speechless. This guy was sticking to him. However, it was also good to have him. He was a true energy realm master. Just now, he had sent 1,000 spring courtyard shadow guard flying with a single punch. His strength was so strong that Nietion was impressed. With Gooden by his side, if he met a true energy realm master, Nietion wouldn't need to use his star souls. Although Nietion had the star soul tablet, it would take at least 3 days to inscribe a 3rd order star soul. Moreover, he could only have 4 star souls at the same time. If he met a true energy realm master and had to use his star soul, then even if the star soul tablet was exhausted, it wouldn't be enough to satisfy Nietion. I need to improve my strength as soon as possible. Nietion sighed in his heart. With his current strength of the giant spirit realm, he could easily deal with any giant spirit realm master. However, against a true energy realm master, he would need to use his star souls. Nietion estimated that if he wanted to compete with a true energy realm master, his strength would need to be at least at the giant spirit realm 7th layer. The true energy of a true energy realm master was too overbearing. Even if Nietion used all his strength, he wouldn't be able to compete with it. Okay. Nietion decisively agreed to Gooden and turned to leave. Boss Nietion, where are we going now? Who are you going to look for? Gooden quickly caught up, chuckling, extremely excited. He had a hunch that if he followed Nye Tian, his future life would definitely be colorful. Chapter 416. At the same time that Nye Tian and Gooden left, in the butterfly pavilion of the Wanshan courtyard, Wang Haorui stood where he was. His face was so badly mutilated that no one could see his expression, but his trembling body undoubtedly showed his anger. He really couldn't understand why Wen Hao would let Nye Tian go when he could have killed him. Didn't he know that letting a tiger go back to the mountain would cause endless trouble? Especially a person like Nye Tian, whose strength was so strange that it sent chills down people's spines. Once he grew up, he would definitely be a heaven-defying figure. In Wang Haorui's eyes, the principle of doing what he said was bullsh asterisk T. The most important thing was to kill the opponent. Your Highness, the others in the hall of the butterfly pavilion had already disappeared. A black-clothed secret guard tried to step forward. Your face, trash. Before the secret guard could finish, Wang Haorui roared and suddenly turned around, shouting, "Go! Follow me to the Imperial Advisor's mansion." Imperial Advisor's mansion? The three secret guards exclaimed at the same time when they heard this name. Their faces were full of fear, as if they had heard the most terrifying news. Wang Haorui turned and left. The three secret guards looked at each other, their eyes full of fear. The Imperial Advisor of the Great Chu Empire was known as the most mysterious person in the Great Chu Empire. It was rumored that except for the Emperor, no one had ever seen the true face of the Imperial Advisor. The people of the Great Chu Empire only knew that there was such a person as the Imperial Advisor. As for whether the Imperial Advisor was a man or a woman, tall or short, fat or thin, no one knew. It was said that all those who had seen the Imperial Advisor's true face, except for the Emperor of the Great Chu Empire, were all dead. That was why the three secret guards were so frightened when they heard Wang Haorui say that they were going to the Imperial Advisor's mansion. They didn't even know that the Imperial Advisor's mansion existed. Go! What are you waiting for? Will you only be satisfied when I am killed? Wang Haorui roared when he saw that the three secret guards didn't move. Yes, even though the three secret guards were very unwilling, they could only follow Wang Haorui. After leaving the Wanshan courtyard, Wang Haorui sat in a carriage. Under the protection of the three secret guards, he came to an extremely remote place outside Chuyang City. The carriage stopped, and what appeared in front of Wang Haorui and the others was a magnificent pavilion. This place was extremely remote, and very few people could find it. The sudden appearance of a magnificent pavilion was extremely strange. Above the luxurious pavilion, there was a very powerful aura of a formation, which faintly condensed into a huge face in midair. If observed carefully, the face in the sky was very much like that of a fox. A pair of lightning-like eyes emitted a cold light, as if it was overlooking the entire Chuyang City. Your Highness, is this the Imperial Advisor's residence? Wang Haorui walked down from the carriage. One of the hidden guards looked at the loft in front of him and asked in a trembling voice. In the eyes of others, this luxurious pavilion gave off an unreal feeling, like an illusory reflection. Follow me. Wang Haorui didn't answer the dark guard's question. Instead, he walked directly towards the attic. The three hidden guards hesitated for a moment before finally following. Wang Haorui stopped tens of meters away from the attic and shouted in a clear voice, "Teacher, disciple Wang Haorui requests an audience." Teacher? Hearing how Wang Haorui addressed him, the three Dark Team guards were stunned. Didn't they come to the Imperial Advisor's residence? Why would Wang Haorui call him teacher? They had never heard that the Imperial Advisor was the Crown Prince's teacher. Whoosh! As Wang Haorui's voice fell, a mist suddenly appeared above the door of the attic. Then, the mist gradually became clear. Like a mirror, it reflected a delicate face. It was the face of a young girl who looked to be around 20 years old. Junior brother, what happened to your face? The girl in the mirror could actually see Wang Haorui. Her voice was cold and very real, as if she was talking to a real person. Wang Haorui's face was badly mutilated, and one could even see his bones. It was very frightening that the girl would ask him. It was cut off. Wang Haorui suppressed his anger and said painfully. The girl in the mirror was slightly surprised. Immediately, her gaze fell on the 3 dark team guards behind Wang Haorui. Her voice was still cold. Who are behind you? They're the guards who escorted me here. Wang Haorui bowed and said respectfully. The girl in the mirror raised her eyebrows slightly, as if she was a little angry. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the next moment, without any warning, 3 white lights suddenly shot out from the mirror and disappeared in a flash. Puff, puff, puff. The 3 dark team guards didn't even have the slightest reaction, and their heads were directly cut off. After they fell to the ground, they still maintained a shocked expression. Wang Haorui gulped. Obviously, he was frightened by the sudden scene. He suddenly knelt down and said with a trembling voice, Senior sister, please spare my life. I know teacher doesn't like outsiders to come here, but I have something urgent to see teacher. I was afraid that there would be danger along the way, so I brought a few dark team guards. Senior sister, please don't tell teacher. I won't dare to do it again. Do you think teacher doesn't know? The girl in the mirror sneered and said, Junior brother, today is not the day to come here. You should know that teacher doesn't like to be disturbed. Go back. This. Wang Haorui's body stiffened, and he directly kowtowed and said, Senior sister, please let me see teacher. I really have something very important to report to teacher. Huh? The girl in the mirror's face turned slightly cold, and she said coldly, Wang Haorui, are you sure you want to see teacher? Wang Haorui's heart inexplicably trembled, and he didn't dare to insist anymore. He knew his teacher very well. If teacher was really unhappy, even if he was the great Shu Crown Prince, he would still be killed. You can leave. The girl in the mirror said indifferently, and then she turned around, and the water mist mirror disappeared. Yes, Wang Haorui answered, and he didn't even dare to raise his head as he retreated. Wang Haorui came to the carriage and was ready to leave. At this moment, the mirror appeared again, and the girl also appeared. Her voice sounded, Junior brother, teacher wants to see you. Okay. Wang Haorui was dazed, and he quickly answered and walked quickly to the pavilion. The pavilion's protective killing array revealed a small gap, and the door opened automatically. Wang Haorui immediately flashed in. Stepping into the pavilion, a beautiful girl in her 20s appeared in front of Wang Haorui, and it was the face in the mirror. Follow me, the girl said indifferently. Wang Haorui followed closely behind her, and he was very careful. In the pavilion, there was a garden. Hundreds of flowers bloomed, and a stream flowed. It was like a paradise on earth. Under the pavilion, in the center of the garden, a long-haired girl stood. She looked to be about 25 or 26 years old, and she wore a red chiffon dress. A black silk belt on her waist showed off her perfect curves vividly. Her facial features were very delicate, exuding a kind of exquisite beauty. There was a blood-red mark between her eyebrows. Coupled with her strange white hair, she exuded a very demonic aura.